A 19-year-old girl wakes up in a locked Italian villa, realizing her father just sold her to erase his gambling debts. The buyer? A powerful crime lord twice her age who expects her to become his wife, or her father dies. No escape, no choice, just cold marble floors and armed guards at every door. What starts as captivity becomes something far more complicated when survival means learning his world, and power becomes the only currency that matters. Stay until the end to see how this ends. Hit like and comment your city so I can see how far this story travels. The villa smelled like old money and cigarette smoke. Lena Hayes stood in the center of a room bigger than her entire house back in Ohio, her sneakers squeaking against marble so white it looked surgical. The ceiling stretched up forever, painted with angels or saints or whatever rich people put on ceilings. She didn't care. She was too busy trying to figure out which door her father had just walked through. "Dad?" Her voice bounced off the walls, came back smaller. No answer. The double doors behind her, heavy wood, iron handles, didn't budge when she grabbed them. Locked. She rattled them anyway, the sound echoing through the emptiness like a bad joke. "Dad!" Still nothing. Lena turned in a slow circle, taking in the room. Expensive furniture she didn't have names for, paintings in gold frames, windows tall enough to drive a truck through, but when she ran to them, she saw bars. Decorative, sure, wrought iron shaped like vines, but bars all the same. Outside, the Italian countryside rolled away in shades of green and gold, dotted with cypress trees that looked like exclamation points. Beautiful. Useless. Her phone was dead. Had been since the airport. Her father said he'd get her a charger at the hotel. There was no hotel. She pressed her forehead against the glass, her breath fogging it up. The flight from Cleveland had taken 14 hours. She'd slept through most of it, trusting her father when he said this was for his business. Some consulting gig in Rome. He needed her there for meetings, he said. Moral support. Brian Hayes had been lying through his teeth. The sound of footsteps made her spin around. A woman entered through a side door Lena hadn't noticed. Mid-50s, gray hair pulled back tight, dressed like she worked at a museum. She carried a tray with a silver teapot and cups that probably cost more than Lena's car. "Good afternoon," the woman said in accented English. "You must be hungry." "Where's my father?" "He has left." "Left?" Lena's voice cracked. "What do you mean, left?" The woman set the tray on a low table, her movements precise. "Mr. Hayes returned to the airport 2 hours ago. His flight departs at 6. The room tilted sideways. "That's not... He wouldn't..." Lena grabbed the back of a chair, her knuckles white. "We came here together. This is his trip." "No, Miss Hayes, this is your arrival." The words didn't make sense. Lena shook her head, trying to clear it. "I want to talk to him. Give me a phone." "Mr. Romano will speak with you shortly." "Who the hell is Mr. Romano?" The woman's expression didn't change. "He owns this property, and many others." She gestured to the tea. "Please, sit. You will need your strength." "I don't want tea. I want answers." "Then you will have them soon enough." The woman moved toward the door. "I suggest you compose yourself. Mr. Romano does not tolerate hysteria." "I'm not hysterical. I'm pissed off." But the door clicked shut, and Lena was alone again. She stood there shaking, her mind racing through possibilities that all sounded insane. Her father brought her to Italy and ditched her. That was the fact. The why didn't compute. Brian Hayes was a screw-up, sure. Lost his job at the plant 2 years ago, never quite got back on his feet. But he wasn't cruel. Weak, maybe. Desperate, definitely. But not this. Unless he was exactly this. Lena paced the room, her footsteps too loud. She tried the windows again, looking for a latch, a weak point, anything, solid. The bars weren't decorative after all. They were functional, set deep into the stone. She was in a cage. The panic hit her then, real and physical. Her chest tightened, her breathing went shallow. She bent over, hands on her knees, forcing air in and out. Her therapist back home had taught her this. Count to 4. Hold. Release. Repeat. It barely worked. When she straightened up, a man was standing in the doorway. Lena hadn't heard him enter. He was tall, maybe 6'2", wearing a suit that looked like it cost more than a semester at community college. Dark hair going silver at the temples. Maybe late 40s, maybe older. The kind of older that came with money and gym memberships. His face was all sharp angles and controlled expressions. He studied her the way someone might study a painting they were considering buying. "Miss Hayes," he said. His English was perfect, barely touched by an accent. "I apologize for the confusion. Please sit." "I'll stand." A slight smile. "As you wish." He moved into the room with the kind of ease that came from owning every space he entered. He didn't sit either, just stood near the fireplace, one hand in his pocket, casual, in control. "My name is Victor Romano. Your father and I have been in communication for several months." "About what?" "About his debt." Lena's stomach dropped. "What debt?" "Approximately $230,000, accrued over the past 18 months through various gambling establishments, some legitimate, most not." Victor's tone was conversational, like they were discussing the weather. "He came to me for assistance when his other creditors became impatient." "That's his problem, not mine." "Ordinarily, yes, but your father proposed an alternative arrangement." The room felt smaller suddenly. Lena's voice came out thin. "What arrangement?" Victor looked at her directly then, and she saw it, the thing beneath the polish. Something cold, ancient, the kind of power that didn't ask permission. "You," he said simply. The word hung in the air between them. Lena laughed. It came out wrong, too high. "That's insane. You can't just... People don't do that. This isn't the Middle Ages." "No, it isn't." Victor moved to the window, looking out at the landscape. "It is modern Italy, where certain transactions still occur outside legal frameworks. Your father understood this when he made his offer." "Offer?" Lena's hands clenched into fists. "He didn't offer anything. I didn't agree to anything. Your consent was not part of the negotiation." The casual way he said it made her vision blur. "You kidnapped me. You entered the country on your own passport. You boarded the flight willingly. You drove here with your father in a car with no locks on the doors." Victor turned to face her. "No kidnapping occurred. You were simply delivered as promised." "I want to leave." "That is not possible. You can't keep me here." "I can. I will." He said it without malice, like stating a fact of physics. "You will remain in this villa until our arrangement is finalized." Lena's throat closed up. She forced the words out anyway. "What arrangement?" Victor walked to a desk in the corner, opened a drawer, and pulled out a folder. He set it on the table beside the untouched tea. "Marriage," he said, "within the month. A legal contract that will bind you to me and erase your father's obligations entirely. He leaves Italy a free man. You remain here as my wife." The floor dropped out from under her. "No." The word came out strangled. "No way. You're out of your mind." "I am many things, Miss Hayes. Insane is not among them." Victor's voice remained level. "I am a businessman who requires a wife for reasons that do not concern you. Your father required capital and a solution to his catastrophic debt. We found mutual benefit." "I'm 19 years old." "Old enough to marry in this country with parental consent, which your father has provided." He tapped the folder. "All documentation is in order. Medical examinations have been scheduled. The ceremony will be private but legally binding." Lena grabbed the folder and threw it across the room, papers scattered like snow. "I won't do it. You can't make me." Victor didn't flinch. He just watched her with those calculating eyes. "Your father returns to the United States tomorrow morning," he said quietly. "If our arrangement is not honored, he will not complete that journey. Do you understand what I am telling you?" Ice water in her veins. "You'd kill him." "I would have him killed, yes. I do not perform such tasks personally." Victor adjusted his cufflinks, a small gesture that somehow made the threat more real. "His debts are held by dangerous people, Miss Hayes. I consolidated them as a favor to him, and to myself. If I release him without compensation, I lose money and credibility. Neither is acceptable." Lena's legs gave out. She sank into the nearest chair, her whole body shaking. "He's my father." "Yes, and he sold you to save himself." Victor's voice held something like sympathy, but it was hard to tell. "I suggest you reconcile yourself to this reality quickly. Anger will not serve you here." She looked up at him, vision blurred with tears she refused to let fall. Why me? You could marry anyone. You have money. You have... She gestured helplessly at the room. All this. Why buy some girl from Ohio? Because you are young, healthy, and come with no attachments that cannot be severed. Because your father was desperate enough to offer, and I was in a position to accept. Because I require a wife who will not ask questions or make demands. He studied her with clinical detachment. You are a solution to a problem, Miss Hayes. Nothing more complex than that. The honesty was worse than lies would have been. Lena wiped her eyes with the back of her hand. Her mascara probably looked like hell. She didn't care. What if I refuse anyway? Then your father dies, and you remain here regardless. The choice is whether you become my wife or my prisoner. One option offers you considerably more freedom than the other. That's not a choice. No, Victor agreed. It is not, but it is all you have. He moved toward the door, his footsteps echoing. Wait, Lena said. Her voice sounded like someone else's. If I agree, what happens to me? Victor paused in the doorway. You will be treated well, educated in the skills you lack, given everything you need and most of what you want within reason. You will appear at my side when required and maintain discretion otherwise. In return, you will have security, comfort, and a life far removed from whatever future awaited you in Ohio. You mean I'll be a trophy? I mean you will be my wife. What that entails will become clear. He glanced back at her. I am not a kind man, Miss Hayes, but I am not needlessly cruel. I expect obedience, not affection. Compliance, not love. If you can provide those things, we will coexist peacefully. And if I can't, something flickered in his expression, then we will both be disappointed, but you will still be my wife. He left without waiting for a response. Lena sat in the enormous room, surrounded by wealth and beauty and bars on the windows, and tried to figure out when her life had become a horror movie. The woman with the tight gray hair returned an hour later. She introduced herself as Signora Rossi, the housekeeper, and showed Lena to a bedroom on the second floor. It was bigger than her apartment back home. 4-poster bed, windows overlooking a garden that looked like something from a romance novel, a bathroom with marble everything, and a shower that probably had more water pressure than Cleveland's entire municipal system. Lena didn't care about any of it. She sat on the edge of the bed, her phone still dead in her pocket, and tried to think. Running seemed obvious. But the villa had guards. She'd seen them on the drive-in, though at the time she'd thought they were just gardeners or maintenance workers. Men with earpieces and bulges under their jackets, not gardeners. Even if she got past them, she was in the middle of the Italian countryside with no money, no phone, and no idea where the nearest town was. She didn't speak the language. She had no passport. Her father had taken it for safekeeping before they left the airport. She was trapped. The realization settled over her like concrete. Signora Rossi brought dinner on a tray. Lena didn't touch it. She lay on the bed and stared at the ceiling, watching the light fade from gold to gray to black. When she finally slept, she dreamed about her father's face the moment he'd left her in that room, the way he wouldn't look at her directly, the hug that felt like goodbye. He'd known exactly what he was doing. Morning came whether she wanted it to or not. Lena woke to sunlight streaming through windows she hadn't bothered to cover. Her mouth tasted like copper, and her eyes felt swollen. She dragged herself to the bathroom and looked in the mirror. She looked like hell. Good. Signora Rossi knocked precisely at 8. Mr. Romano requests your presence for breakfast. Tell him I'm not hungry. He insists. I insist on staying here. There was a pause, then the sound of a lock clicking. Lena tried the bedroom door. It didn't open. You have 10 minutes to dress appropriately, Signora Rossi said through the wood. There are clothes in the wardrobe. If you do not appear, Mr. Romano will come to retrieve you himself. I do not recommend this option. Lena kicked the door. It hurt her foot more than the door. She dressed in her own clothes, jeans and a t-shirt that said Cleveland Rocks across the front, just to prove a point. Then she sat on the bed and waited. Exactly 10 minutes later, the lock clicked again. The door opened. Signora Rossi stood there with an expression that might have been sympathy or might have been annoyance, hard to tell. This way, Miss Hayes. Lena followed because what else was she going to do? The villa was even bigger than she'd realized. They walked through hallways lined with art that probably belonged in museums, past rooms she only glimpsed through open doors. A library, a study, something that looked like a home gym. They ended up in a breakfast room that faced the garden. Victor sat at the head of a long table reading something on a tablet. He looked up when she entered. "Good morning." Lena didn't answer. She sat in the chair farthest from him and stared at the wall. Victor set down the tablet. "You did not eat dinner." "Wasn't hungry." "You will eat breakfast." "You gonna force feed me?" "If necessary." He poured coffee from a silver pot. "But I would prefer not to. It is undignified for us both." Lena looked at him then, really looked. He was wearing another expensive suit, this one charcoal gray. His hair was perfectly styled. He looked like he'd slept great and had zero moral conflicts about buying human beings. "How do you do it?" she asked. "Do what?" "Live with yourself." Victor considered the question while he added sugar to his coffee. "I made a business arrangement with a desperate man. You are angry with the wrong person, Miss Hayes. You paid him to hand over his daughter. I paid him to resolve a debt that would have ended with his death. That you were part of the resolution was his choice, not mine." He took a sip of coffee. "I did not create your father's gambling problem. I did not force him into debt. I simply provided a solution when he came begging for one. You took advantage. I recognized opportunity. These are not the same thing." Lena wanted to throw the coffee pot at his head. She settled for glaring. Signora Rossi appeared with plates of food, eggs, fruit, bread that smelled fresh from an oven somewhere. Lena's stomach betrayed her by growling. "Eat," Victor said. It wasn't a suggestion. She ate, hating herself for it, but eating anyway. The food was incredible. That made it worse somehow. Victor watched her for a moment, then returned to his tablet. They sat in silence except for the sound of silverware against porcelain. Finally, Lena couldn't take it anymore. "So what happens now?" "Now you begin learning." "Learning what?" "Italian, for starters. You cannot function here without the language. Also etiquette, history, culture. How to move in the circles I move in, how to speak to certain people and when to remain silent." He looked at her over the rim of his cup. "You are rough material, Miss Hayes. You will need considerable refinement." "I'm not a project." "You are exactly that, but a worthwhile one if you cooperate." Lena set down her fork. "And if I don't?" "Then you remain locked in this villa with nothing to do but think about your choices until you change your mind." Victor's voice was patient, like he was explaining something to a child. "I have time, you have time, but only one of us has control over how that time is spent." He stood, smoothing his jacket. "Your first lesson begins at 10. A tutor will meet you in the library. Signora Rossi will show you where it is." "I'm not going to any lesson." Victor paused at the door. "Yes, you will. Because the alternative is sitting in your room alone while your father boards a plane that may or may not reach its destination depending on your behavior in the next 24 hours. Do you understand?" Lena's hands clenched in her lap. "I hate you." "That is acceptable. Hate does not interfere with obedience." He checked his watch. 10 o'clock, Miss Hayes. Do not be late." He left, and Lena sat alone in the breakfast room, surrounded by luxury and trapped more thoroughly than if she'd been in chains. The library was 3 stories tall, stuffed with books in languages Lena couldn't read. The tutor was a thin man named Professor Greco, who spoke English with a British accent and looked at her like she was a disappointing test result. "We will begin with basic Italian," he said, handing her a workbook. "Greetings, common phrases, essential vocabulary." Lena stared at the workbook. "What if I refuse?" "Then you sit here for the next 4 hours anyway, wasting both our time. I am paid regardless." He settled into a chair across from her. "Your choice, Miss Hayes." She opened the workbook. The first lesson was brutal. Professor Greco had no patience for mistakes and less for attitude. He corrected her pronunciation with the enthusiasm of someone pointing out fatal flaws. By noon, Lena's head hurt, and she'd learned maybe 20 words. Lunch was served in her room. She ate mechanically, tasting nothing. The afternoon brought a different teacher. This one was a woman named Lucia, who was supposed to teach her about Italian culture and history. Mostly, it felt like being told all the ways she was ignorant. By the time dinner rolled around, Lena was exhausted and furious, and so homesick she could barely breathe. Signora Rossi knocked at 6. "Mr. Romano requests your company for dinner." "Tell him I'm not coming." He anticipated this response. "He said to inform you that your father's plane landed safely in New York 2 hours ago. He is currently in his apartment, unharmed. Mr. Romano suggests you join him for dinner to ensure the status remains unchanged." Lena closed her eyes. Fine. Dinner was in a formal dining room this time. Victor was already seated, looking like he'd had a productive day doing whatever crime lords did with their time. "How were your lessons?" he asked as Lena sat down. "Awful. Professor Greco said you were attentive despite your initial resistance. He believes you have potential. How nice for him." Victor allowed a slight smile. "You will adjust, Miss Hayes. Everyone does eventually." "To being a prisoner?" "To their circumstances, which for you include safety, education, and comfort most people will never experience. There are worse fates." Lena picked up her fork, then set it back down. "Can I ask you something?" "You may ask. I may not answer." "Why do you need a wife, someone like you, with your money, your—" She gestured vaguely. "Power. Why go through all this?" Victor was quiet for a moment. Then he said, "There are aspects of my business that require certain appearances. A wife provides legitimacy, stability. It signals to others that I am settled, invested in the future. It opens doors that remain closed to single men in my position. So I'm a business card. You are a strategic asset." "Yes." At least he was honest. Lena almost appreciated it. Almost. "What about your business? What exactly do you do?" "I facilitate transactions. Connect people who need services with people who provide them. I manage investments, properties, import and export operations." He cut into his steak with surgical precision. "The specifics are not your concern. Crime, then? That is a matter of perspective and jurisdiction. Here, I am a businessman. Well-connected, well-compensated, well-protected." He looked at her directly. "You do not need to understand my work, Miss Hayes. You only need to stand beside me when required and ask no questions. And if I see something I shouldn't, then you will forget it immediately. Your continued safety depends on your discretion." The threat was casual, almost gentle. That made it more effective. They ate in silence for a while. The food was excellent again. Lena was starting to resent that. "How long until the wedding?" she asked eventually. 23 days. "The paperwork is being finalized. You will have a dress fitted this week. The ceremony will be small. No guests beyond the minimum legal requirements." "Romantic." "I am not interested in romance, Miss Hayes. I am interested in efficiency." Victor set down his fork. "After the wedding, you will have more freedom. You will be able to leave the villa with appropriate escort. You will have accounts in your name, access to resources. But until then, you remain here, learning what you need to know." "So I graduate from prisoner to trophy wife." "You graduate to wife. What kind depends entirely on your behavior." Lena pushed her plate away. "I'm done." "You barely ate." "I'm done," she repeated. Victor studied her for a long moment. Then he nodded. "You may go." Lena stood, her legs shaky. She made it to the door before he spoke again. "Miss Hayes." She stopped but didn't turn around. "Your anger is understandable, even expected. But it will not change your situation. The sooner you accept this, the easier your life becomes. I do not enjoy seeing you suffer, but I will not release you. Make peace with that." Lena left without responding. She made it back to her room before the tears came, hot and angry and useless. She cried into her pillow until there was nothing left, then lay in the dark and tried to remember what her life had been like a week ago. It felt like another person's memories. Days blurred together. Lena woke, attended lessons, ate meals she barely tasted, and went to bed exhausted. Professor Greco drilled her on Italian until the words started appearing in her dreams. Lucia filled her head with history she didn't care about, and etiquette rules that felt like learning to be someone else. A third teacher appeared on the 4th day. His name was Marco, and he taught self-defense. Why do I need to know this? Lena asked, staring at the gym mats he'd set up in one of the villa's many rooms. Because Mr. Romano's wife must be able to protect herself if necessary, Marco said. He was built like a brick wall and spoke English with a heavy accent. Begin with stretches. The first session left her bruised and sore. The second was worse. By the third, Lena started to get angry in a useful way, angry enough to hit back when Marco came at her, angry enough to channel all her fear and frustration into learning how to hurt someone. Marco noticed. Good, he said, after she landed a decent strike. Use that. Anger makes you strong if you control it. Lena practiced until her knuckles bled. Signora Rossi brought ice and bandages. She didn't comment on the state Lena was in, just wrapped her hands with efficient care. You are doing well, she said quietly. I'm a prisoner learning party tricks. You are surviving. Signora Rossi met her eyes. This is more than many girls in your position manage. Mr. Romano is not the worst man you could have been given to. That's a hell of a comfort. It is the truth. Small comfort is better than none. She finished the bandages. Eat, rest. Tomorrow will be the same. She was right. Tomorrow was the same. And the next day. And the day after that. But slowly, something shifted. Lena started picking up Italian faster. Not fluently, but enough to understand when Signora Rossi spoke to the guards, or when Professor Greco insulted her under his breath. Enough to catch fragments of conversations she wasn't supposed to hear. She learned to move differently from Marco's training. Learned where to hit, how to break a hold, how to use someone's weight against them. It probably wouldn't help against armed guards, but it made her feel less helpless. And she learned to watch Victor. He was methodical, she realized. Everything he did served a purpose. The way he dressed, the way he spoke, even the way he drank his coffee. It was all calculated. He was a man who controlled every variable he could reach, except maybe her. Lena tested small rebellions, arriving 5 minutes late to lessons, wearing the wrong clothes to dinner, speaking in English when he'd asked a question in Italian. Victor never raised his voice, never threatened. He just adjusted. Made the consequences clear without emotion. A locked door here, a privilege revoked there. Always proportional, always fair in his own twisted logic. It was infuriating how reasonable he was about it. 2 weeks in, Lena stood in front of a mirror while a seamstress pinned her wedding dress. It was beautiful, ivory silk, simple lines, nothing like the princess fantasies she'd had as a kid. This was elegant, expensive, and felt like a costume for someone else's life. Victor entered the room, surveyed the scene, and nodded. Acceptable. The seamstress bowed her head slightly and continued pinning. Lena caught his reflection in the mirror. Don't I get a say? Do you object to the dress? She looked at herself. The girl in the mirror was thinner than she'd been 2 weeks ago. Her eyes were harder. She looked older. No, she admitted. Then you have had your say. He moved closer, examining the fit with a critical eye. The ceremony is in 9 days. All arrangements are finalized. Do you have questions? What happens after? After the wedding? Life continues. You will have more freedom, as I mentioned, within limits. What limits? You will not leave the country. You will not contact your father without my permission. You will not speak to authorities about our arrangement. You will not embarrass me in public. He ticked off each point like items on a grocery list. Beyond that, you may pursue whatever interests you wish. Education, hobbies, charitable work, if it appeals to you. How generous. It is more than generous. It is survival, Miss Hayes. Learn to recognize the difference. The seamstress finished and left them alone. Lena stood on the small platform in the wedding dress, feeling ridiculous and trapped and so tired of fighting. What do you want from me? She asked quietly. Really? Victor considered the question. I want you to fulfill your role without complication. Appear at my side when necessary. Maintain the image we present to the world. In private, I expect discretion and obedience. That is all. And if I can't do that? Then we will both be disappointed. But you will try anyway, because the alternative is unacceptable to you. He adjusted his cufflinks. You are stronger than you believe, Miss Hayes. You have survived these 2 weeks without breaking. That demonstrates character. Or stupidity. Sometimes they are the same thing, a slight smile. Change out of the dress. Dinner is at 7. He left, and Lena stood alone in the beautiful gown, staring at a stranger in the mirror. 9 days. In 9 days, she would marry a man she hated, in a country that wasn't hers, for reasons that had nothing to do with love and everything to do with money and power and her father's cowardice. But she would survive it, because that's what she did now. She survived. The night before the wedding, Lena couldn't sleep. She stood at her window, looking out at the garden bathed in moonlight. Somewhere beyond the walls and the guards and the cypress trees, there was a world where 19-year-old girls went to college and worried about normal things. That world didn't include her anymore. A knock at the door. Signora Rossi entered without waiting for permission. "You should rest," she said. "Can't." "Understandable." The older woman crossed to the window, stood beside her. "I was married at 18, arranged, to a man I had met twice." Lena looked at her. "Did you love him?" "Eventually. Not at first. First I learned to tolerate him, then to respect him. Love came later, after children, after years of sharing life." She smiled faintly. "It is not the romance of movies, but it was real. And enough." "Did you have a choice?" "No more than you do now." Signora Rossi's voice was gentle. "But I made a life anyway." "You will too." "How do you know?" "Because you are still fighting. The ones who break do so in the first days. You have not broken. You have bent, yes, but not broken." She touched Lena's shoulder briefly. "Sleep if you can. Tomorrow will be difficult regardless." She left Lena alone with the moonlight and the weight of tomorrow. Lena did not sleep. She watched the sun rise over the Italian countryside and tried to remember the sound of her father's voice when he'd told her he loved her. It was getting harder to recall. By the time Signora Rossi arrived to help her dress, Lena had made a decision. She would marry Victor Romano. She would play the role she'd been forced into, but she would not disappear. She would not become just another possession in his collection of expensive things. She would survive. And surviving meant staying herself, even if she had to do it in a wedding dress she hadn't chosen, speaking vows she didn't mean, to a man who saw her as a solution to a problem. The dress fit perfectly. Of course it did. The ceremony took 11 minutes. Lena stood in a small room that Victor called a chapel, though it looked more like someone's expensive office with religious decorations. A priest with nervous hands read from a book in rapid Italian. 2 witnesses she'd never met stood against the wall like furniture. Victor held her hand with the same detachment he might hold a briefcase. When the priest asked her to speak, Lena's voice came out steady. She surprised herself with that. "Si." 1 word. It might as well have been a life sentence. Victor slid a ring onto her finger. Platinum, diamonds, she didn't count. It was heavy. When he lifted her veil to kiss her, his lips barely touched hers. Professional. Efficient. Over before she could process it. The witnesses signed papers. The priest blessed them with what sounded like relief in his voice. And just like that, Lena Hayes became Lena Romano. Mrs. Victor Romano. The title felt like a collar. "We will have lunch," Victor said as they left the chapel. Not a question. Never a question with him. Lunch was served on a terrace overlooking the garden, just the 2 of them. White tablecloth, silver place settings, wine that probably cost more than her father's car, a wedding reception for 2. Lena drank the wine faster than she should have. Victor noticed but didn't comment. He ate methodically, the same way he did everything. Between bites, he outlined what came next. "Tonight we attend a gathering in Florence. Business associates. You will be introduced as my wife. Your role is simple. Stay beside me, smile when appropriate, speak only when directly addressed." "Sounds thrilling." "It is necessary." He refilled her wine glass. "These people need to see that I am settled, stable. A married man makes different impressions than a single one." "Your business card theory." "Precisely." He studied her across the table. "You will meet dangerous people tonight, Lena. Men who would hurt you without hesitation if they perceived weakness or opportunity. Your safety depends on your ability to appear as my wife, not my hostage." It was the first time he'd used her first name. She noticed. "What if I slip up?" "Then I will correct the situation before it becomes a problem." "But you will not slip up. You are smarter than you pretend to be." Victor set down his fork. I have watched you these past weeks. You learn quickly when motivated. Tonight, your motivation is survival. That should be sufficient. Lena looked down at the ring on her finger. The diamonds caught the sunlight, threw rainbows across the white tablecloth. What if I just tell someone the truth? That you bought me? That I didn't choose this? Then you will discover that truth is less powerful than you imagine. These men know what I am, what I do. They will not care how I acquired a wife, only that I have one. His voice remained level. And I will be forced to remind you why honesty is dangerous. I would prefer not to do that. The implicit threat settled between them like a third presence at the table. Lena finished her wine. What time do we leave? 7. Signora Rossi has selected appropriate attire. You have 4 hours to prepare. Lucky me. Victor stood, smoothing his jacket. Welcome to your new life, Mrs. Romano. I suggest you embrace it before it becomes significantly less pleasant. He left her alone on the terrace with the remains of their wedding lunch and the weight of what she'd just become. The dress Signora Rossi had chosen was emerald green silk that hugged every curve Lena had and suggested a few she didn't. The neckline was modest enough to pass for elegant, but low enough to remind everyone looking that she was young. The jewelry was simple: diamond earrings, a delicate necklace. Her hair had been styled into something that looked effortless, but had taken the better part of an hour to achieve. Lena stared at herself in the mirror and barely recognized the woman looking back. You look beautiful, Signora Rossi said quietly. I look expensive. Sometimes these are the same thing. The older woman adjusted the necklace slightly. Remember what I told you. Watch Mr. Romano. Follow his lead. Do not drink too much. Do not speak unless spoken to first. These men are dangerous, I know. He told me. Signora Rossi met her eyes in the mirror. They are more than dangerous, child. They are powerful. Power makes men believe they are entitled to anything they want. You wear Mr. Romano's ring. That protects you, but only if you reinforce it with your behavior. Translation: don't give them ideas. Exactly. She handed Lena a small clutch purse. Your lipstick is inside. Reapply only in private, never at the table. Any other rules I should know? Hundreds. But those can wait. Tonight, just survive. Victor was waiting in the foyer when Lena descended the stairs. He wore a tuxedo that probably cost more than a semester of college. His expression didn't change when he saw her, but his eyes did a quick assessment. Acceptable, he said. You really know how to make a girl feel special. I pay people to make you look special. I merely observe the results. He offered his arm. The car is waiting. Lena took his arm because refusing would have been pointless. His muscles were solid under the expensive fabric. She'd forgotten how physically imposing he was when he stood this close. The car was a black Mercedes with windows tinted so dark she couldn't see inside until the driver opened the door. The interior smelled like leather and money. Victor slid in beside her, and they pulled away from the villa into the Tuscan twilight. They drove in silence for 20 minutes. Lena watched the countryside roll past, vineyards and olive groves and medieval towns perched on hilltops like chess pieces. Beautiful. Foreign. Might as well have been another planet. Nervous? Victor asked eventually. Should I be? Yes, but you will not show it. He adjusted his cufflinks, a gesture she'd learned meant he was thinking. The man hosting tonight is called Matteo Salvatore. He controls shipping throughout the Mediterranean, legitimate and otherwise. He has known me for 15 years and trusts me as much as men like us trust anyone. Men like us? You mean criminals? I mean businessmen who operate beyond traditional regulatory frameworks. Criminals is such a limited term. Victor's tone was almost amused. Matteo will want to meet you. He will ask personal questions. You will answer briefly and politely. If he becomes inappropriate, I will intervene. Define inappropriate. You will know it when it happens. So will I. He looked at her directly. There will be other women there. Wives, mistresses, escorts. Some are complicit in their men's business. Others are decorative. You need to be neither. You are simply my wife. Nothing more, nothing less. Just another accessory. If that is how you wish to view it. Victor returned his attention to the window. We stay for 3 hours. No more. You will be tired by then, and I have no interest in prolonging the evening beyond what is necessary. The villa, because of course it was another villa, appeared as they crested a hill. This one was larger than Victor's, lit up like a resort. Cars lined the circular drive, each one more expensive than the last. Men in dark suits stood at intervals, earpieces visible. Security theater or actual security, Lena couldn't tell. The driver stopped at the entrance. Victor exited first, then offered his hand to help Lena out. She took it, her heels clicking on the stone. "Remember," Victor said quietly as they approached the door, "you are mine. Act accordingly." Before Lena could respond, the doors opened, and they were swallowed by light and noise, and people who looked at her like she was the newest acquisition in an art gallery. The party was in full swing. Chandeliers the size of compact cars hung from ceilings painted with scenes Lena didn't recognize. Music played from somewhere, classical. Strings? The kind of thing that costs money to ignore. Waiters circulated with champagne and appetizers that looked too pretty to eat. Victor kept his hand on the small of her back as they moved through the crowd. A proprietary touch. Everyone noticed it. Men in tuxedos nodded to Victor. Their eyes slid to Lena, assessed, calculated, moved on. The women were worse. They looked at her like they were solving a math problem. Too young, too American, too obviously new to this world. Lena lifted her chin and met their stares with the blankest expression she could manage. If they wanted to see a trophy, she'd give them one made of ice. "Victor!" a man's voice boomed across the room. "Finally! We thought you would miss your own celebration." The man approaching was shorter than Victor, but wider, built like someone who'd been an athlete once and then discovered good food. His tuxedo strained slightly at the shoulders. His smile showed too many teeth. "Matteo." The Victor shook his hand with what looked like genuine warmth. "Thank you for hosting. May I introduce my wife, Lena?" Matteo's eyes went straight to Lena, not her face. The inventory took 3 seconds. "Bellissima," he said, taking her hand and kissing it. His lips were damp. "Victor, you have outdone yourself. Where did you find such a treasure?" "Ohio," Lena said before Victor could answer. Matteo laughed like she'd told the funniest joke he'd heard all week. "American, I love it. Fresh, yes? Not yet corrupted by our European ways." "Getting there," Lena said. Victor's hand tightened fractionally on her back. A warning she felt through the silk. Matteo clapped Victor on the shoulder. "You must introduce her to everyone. Come, come. The others are dying to meet the woman who finally tamed Victor Romano." He led them deeper into the party, still talking. Victor leaned close to Lena's ear. "Careful," he murmured. "I'm being charming." "You are being sharp. There is a difference." Matteo introduced them to a succession of men whose names Lena immediately forgot. They all looked the same: expensive suits, expensive watches, expensive smiles that didn't reach their eyes. Their wives and girlfriends were variations on a theme: beautiful, polished, silent unless spoken to. Lena smiled until her face hurt and said as little as possible. Survived each conversation by counting seconds until it ended. Then they met Carlo. He was younger than the others, maybe late 30s, with the kind of face that belonged in cologne ads. His suit was impeccable. His handshake lingered too long. "So you are the famous Lena," he said in perfect English. "Victor has been very secretive about you. Now I understand why. He wanted to keep you all to himself. Can you blame me?" Victor's tone was light, but Lena felt the tension in his hand. "Not at all. If she were mine, I would lock her away as well." Carlo smiled at Lena. "Tell me, how does a girl from Ohio end up married to our Victor? It must be quite a story." "Not really," Lena said. "We met. We married. Pretty standard." "Nothing about Victor is standard." Carlo accepted champagne from a passing waiter, handed a glass to Lena. "He is the most careful man I know. Calculating. Every decision serves multiple purposes. So I wonder, what purpose do you serve?" The question was rude enough that several nearby conversations paused. Victor's voice cut in, still pleasant but with an edge underneath. "She serves the purpose of being my wife, Carlo. Which should be explanation enough." Of course. Forgive me." Carlo raised his glass. "To love. The one thing that makes even careful men reckless." They drank. The champagne tasted like very expensive regret. Carlo drifted away, still smiling. Victor guided Lena toward a quieter corner of the room. "Who is that?" she asked. "Competition. He runs operations in the north. We have an arrangement, but he would prefer I did not exist." Victor took her champagne glass, set it on a passing tray. "He was testing you, trying to determine if you are a weakness he can exploit. And you handled it adequately, but we will not stay much longer." They lasted another hour. Lena met more people, forgot more names, deflected more questions that felt like traps. Her feet hurt from the heels, her face hurt from smiling. Her head hurt from the effort of appearing calm while screaming internally. Finally, Victor made their excuses. Matteo protested, but not seriously. They said goodbyes that felt rehearsed, walked back to the car through air that smelled like jasmine and cigarette smoke. The Mercedes pulled away from the villa. Lena kicked off her heels and leaned her head against the window. "You did well," Victor said. "I survived. Not the same thing. In our world, they are exactly the same thing." He loosened his bow tie. "Carlo will report to his associates that you appear genuine, that I am truly married, not simply playing games. This helps us both." "Glad I could be useful." Victor was quiet for a moment, then, "You were more than useful. You were convincing. Several people commented on how well suited we appear." "We're not suited at all." "No, but we presented the illusion successfully. That is what matters." He looked at her in the dim light of the car. "You are learning, Lena, faster than I anticipated." "Learning what?" "How to be a good little trophy?" "Learning how to navigate power. It is a valuable skill regardless of your feelings about your current circumstances." Lena didn't respond. She watched the Tuscan darkness slide past and tried not to think about the fact that she was returning to a villa she'd never chosen, with a man she'd never wanted, wearing a ring that felt like evidence of a crime. When they arrived home, Victor walked her to the stairs. "You may sleep late tomorrow," he said. "You have earned it." "Permission to rest. How generous." "It is called consideration. Perhaps you might try recognizing it." He turned toward his study. "Good night, Lena." She watched him walk away, then climbed the stairs to her room. Signora Rossi had left a nightgown laid out on the bed. Lena stripped off the green dress, let it pool on the floor, and pulled on the nightgown. She lay in bed staring at the ceiling, replaying the evening. The way those men had looked at her. The way their wives had dismissed her. The way Carlo had tested her like she was a piece of equipment Victor had purchased. Which she supposed she was. Sleep didn't come for hours. The next morning, Lena woke to sunlight and the smell of coffee. Signora Rossi had left a tray on the bedside table, espresso, fresh bread, fruit. A note in careful English. "No lessons today, rest." Lena ate mechanically, then wandered to the window. The garden below was perfect. Everything in this place was perfect. Manicured, controlled, just like her life was supposed to be now. She was still standing there when someone knocked. "Come in," she called, expecting Signora Rossi. It was Victor. He was dressed casually for once, dark slacks, a white shirt with the sleeves rolled up, no jacket. It was the most undone she'd seen him. "I thought you might like to leave the villa today," he said. Lena turned to face him. "Leave? You have been here for weeks. You have fulfilled your obligations. You deserve to see something beyond these walls." He gestured toward the door. "Get dressed. Something comfortable. We leave in 20 minutes. "Where are we going?" "Does it matter? You will be outside. Is that not enough?" It was. Lena dressed faster than she had in weeks. They took a different car this time, smaller, less ostentatious. Victor drove himself, which surprised her. No driver. No guards trailing behind. Just the two of them and the open road. They drove through the Tuscan countryside in silence at first. Lena watched the landscape roll past. Vineyards heavy with grapes, farmhouses the color of sunset, cypress trees standing guard over hills that looked painted on. "It's beautiful," she said eventually. "Yes, this is why people come here, why they stay." Victor navigated a curve with practiced ease. "I grew up not far from here. A small town you would not recognize. My family had nothing. We survived on luck and determination." It was the first personal thing he'd ever told her. "How did you end up?" Lena gestured vaguely. "Like this?" "Like what? Successful? Powerful? Criminal? He almost smiled. I learned early that the world rewards those who take what they want. I wanted more than poverty, so I took it. By hurting people? By recognizing opportunities others missed, by being willing to do what they were not. He glanced at her. You judge me. That is your right. But you also benefit from what I have built. Do not forget that. I didn't ask to benefit from it. No, but you do anyway. The food you eat, the clothes you wear, the safety you enjoy, all purchased with money from the very activities you condemn. Victor returned his attention to the road. Hypocrisy is unattractive, Lena. Either accept what I am or do not. But do not pretend you are above it while living in comfort it provides. The words stung because they were true. They drove in silence after that. Eventually, Victor pulled off the main road onto a smaller one that wound up into the hills. The car climbed higher until they reached a viewpoint overlooking a valley. He parked and got out. Lena followed. The view stretched for miles, fields of sunflowers, medieval towns clustered on hilltops, the distant smudge of mountains on the horizon. The wind smelled like earth and growing things. This is where I come when I need to think, Victor said. He stood near the edge, hands in his pockets. When the business becomes too much, when the decisions weigh heavier than they should. Lena stood beside him, careful to keep distance between them. Do you regret it? The things you've done? No. Regret is indulgence. I made choices. I live with them. He turned to look at her. Do you regret saying yes at the ceremony? I didn't have a choice. You had a choice. It was a terrible one, but it was still a choice. You could have refused. Let your father face the consequences. Let me keep you as a prisoner instead of a wife. You chose the option that preserved the most for yourself. That's not fair. It is entirely fair. It is honest. You made a calculation the same way I do, the same way everyone does when faced with impossible situations. Victor's voice was surprisingly gentle. You are not a victim, Lena. You are a survivor. The sooner you understand the difference, the better your life becomes. Lena looked out at the valley, at the beauty that had nothing to do with the ugliness underneath it. What do you want from me? She asked. Really, long term. Victor considered the question. I want you to be my wife in truth, not simply in name. I want you to stand beside me without resentment poisoning every interaction. I want... He paused, seeming to choose his words carefully. I want a partner, not a possession, but partnership requires trust, and trust requires time. You bought me. How am I supposed to trust you? You are not. Not yet, but perhaps eventually. He pulled car keys from his pocket. Come. There's a town nearby. We will have lunch. You will practice your Italian. We will pretend to be a normal couple for a few hours. We're not a normal couple. No? But we can pretend. Pretending is half of what makes this world function. They drove to a town called Montepulciano, all steep streets and stone buildings that looked like they'd been there since Rome was still an empire. Victor parked in a small piazza and led her through narrow alleys to a restaurant that had maybe 6 tables. The owner greeted Victor like family. They spoke in rapid Italian that Lena could barely follow. She caught her name, caught Mowgli, wife, caught the approving way the owner looked at her. They sat at a table by the window. Victor ordered for both of them, didn't ask what she wanted. The food arrived in waves, pasta, wine, bread still warm from the oven. Lena ate and watched people pass by the window. Normal people doing normal things, shopping, talking, living lives that didn't involve being sold to pay debts. Tell me about Ohio, Victor said. She looked at him, surprised. Why? Because I know nothing about you beyond the information your father provided. If we are to be married, I should know something of your life before. There's not much to know. Small town, dead-end job at a diner, community college classes I couldn't afford to finish. Nothing special. Yet you learn to survive there as well. Small towns can be as cruel as any city. Lena thought about the high school where everyone knew her father was a drunk. The look she got at the grocery store when he hadn't paid his tab at the liquor store. The way opportunities closed before they even opened because of who she was. Yeah, she said, I survived there too. And now you survive here. Perhaps that is the common thread of your life. That's depressing as hell. Or it is strength. Perspective matters. Victor refilled her wine glass. You could have broken. Many would. You have not. I find that admirable. It was the closest thing to a compliment he'd ever given her. They finished lunch and walked through the town. Victor showed her buildings that were older than her country, explained history she hadn't asked about. He was different here, away from the villa and the business. Almost human. Almost. On the drive back, Lena's phone buzzed. She'd gotten it back a week ago. A new one, with a new number, with Victor's name programmed as the only contact allowed to reach her. She pulled it out. A message from her father. Happy birthday, sweetheart. Hope you're doing okay. Miss you. Love, Dad. Her birthday. She'd forgotten. 20 years old today. Victor glanced over. What is it? Nothing. Just my father. Lena deleted the message. He remembered my birthday. How thoughtful of him. The sarcasm was thick enough to cut. He's still my father, Lena said. He is the man who sold you. Do not romanticize his occasional moments of guilt. Victor's voice hardened. He does not deserve your loyalty. And you do? I have never claimed to deserve anything from you. I simply expect it because I own the consequences of your choices. He pulled into the villa's drive. Your father gave you away. I kept you alive. Remember which one actually matters. They didn't speak for the rest of the evening. That night, alone in her room, Lena stared at her phone. Her father's message was gone, but the words stuck. She typed a response 7 different ways and deleted all of them. Finally, she settled on, I'm alive. Don't contact me again. She sent it before she could change her mind. 3 minutes later, her phone rang. Her father's number. Lena stared at it until it stopped ringing. When it started again, immediately, she turned off the phone and shoved it in a drawer. Some ghost needed to stay buried. The weeks after that settled into a routine. Lena continued her lessons, but with more freedom now. She could walk the villa grounds without escort, could use the library, the gym, the garden, could go to the town nearby with Marco as a guard/driver. She practiced Italian until she could hold conversations. Practiced self-defense until she could make Marco work for his wins. Practiced being Victor's wife at dinner every night, learning to read his moods, to anticipate what he needed before he asked. It felt like learning to be someone else. Maybe it was. Victor traveled frequently for business. Sometimes he was gone for days. When he returned, he always brought her something: books, jewelry, a painting she'd mentioned liking, gifts that felt like apologies for things he'd never say sorry for. She accepted them because refusing would have been pointless. 2 months after the wedding, Victor announced they were hosting a gathering at the villa. Business associates, people he needed to impress. You will act as hostess, he said over breakfast. Signora Rossi will help with arrangements. You will greet guests, ensure they are comfortable, facilitate conversation. This is your opportunity to demonstrate that you are more than decoration. No pressure then. Significant pressure, but I believe you can handle it. He set down his coffee cup. These people will be watching for weakness, for signs that our marriage is a facade. You will show them none. And if I mess up, then we both suffer the consequences. So do not mess up. The gathering was in 5 days. Lena spent every waking hour preparing, learning names, memorizing faces from photos Victor provided, studying the dynamics between people she'd never met. Signora Rossi drilled her on hosting protocol, where people should sit, what to serve when, how to navigate conversations without appearing too invested or too distant. Marco increased her training. You need to project confidence, he said. These men smell fear. They will test you. By the night of the gathering, Lena felt like she'd studied for an exam that might kill her if she failed. The guests arrived at 8. Lena stood beside Victor at the entrance, greeting each one with a smile that felt painted on. She spoke Italian when appropriate, English when necessary, and somehow remembered every name she was supposed to remember. Carlo was there. He kissed her hand again, his smile all teeth. You look radiant, Lena. Marriage agrees with you. Thank you, Carlo. Victor is a lucky man. I remind him daily, she said, and got a genuine laugh from the group around them. The evening progressed. Lena circulated, made small talk, ensured glasses stayed full and conversation stayed light. She felt Victor's eyes on her throughout, watching, assessing. She didn't falter. Dinner was served in the grand dining room. Lena sat at Victor's right hand, played the perfect hostess, laughed at jokes that weren't funny, and ignored comments that were too familiar. Then Matteo stood to make a toast. "To Victor and his beautiful bride," he said, raising his glass. "May your marriage be long and profitable for all of us." Everyone drank. Lena smiled and pretended her stomach wasn't churning. After dinner, the men retreated to Victor's study. Business talk. The women gathered in the sitting room. Lena found herself surrounded by wives who looked at her like they were trying to solve a puzzle. "So," one of them said, Angela, married to a man who ran casinos. "How are you adjusting to Italian life?" "It's beautiful here," Lena said carefully. "But different from Ohio, yes? So provincial there." "Different. Not better or worse, just different." Another woman, Francesca, someone's mistress, leaned forward. "You must tell us. How did Victor propose? He is so serious. I cannot imagine him being romantic." Lena felt the trap in the question. They wanted to know if this was real. "He doesn't do romantic," she said honestly. "He does practical, but it works for us." The women exchanged glances. Lena couldn't read what they meant. The conversation shifted to fashion, to travel, to gossip about people Lena didn't know. She participated enough to seem engaged, not enough to give them ammunition. When the men finally emerged from the study 2 hours later, Lena felt like she'd run a marathon. The guests left slowly, each one saying goodbye with varying degrees of sincerity. Carlo was last. "You surprised me tonight," he said to Lena. "I expected fragility. Instead, I saw steel." "Disappointment looks good on you," she replied. He laughed and turned to Victor. "You chose well, my friend. She is formidable." "I know," Victor said. There was something in his voice Lena couldn't identify. When the last car pulled away, Victor turned to her. "Well done." "That's it?" "Well done." "What else would you like me to say?" "I don't know. Maybe that I held my own against a room full of people who wanted to see me fail. Maybe that I didn't embarrass you." Lena pulled off her heels, carried them in one hand. "Maybe thank you." Victor's expression shifted. "You are right, thank you. You exceeded my expectations tonight. You were—" He seemed to search for the word. "Impressive." It was the best he could do. Maybe the best he had. Lena nodded. "I'm going to bed." She made it halfway up the stairs before he spoke again. "Lena." She turned. Victor stood at the bottom of the stairs, looking up at her with an expression she'd never seen before, something almost like respect. "You're becoming who you need to be," he said quietly. "I know you did not choose this, but you are surviving it with grace. That means something." "Does it change anything?" "No, but it matters anyway." Lena continued up the stairs, too exhausted to figure out what he meant. In her room, she stripped off the dress, washed off the makeup, and lay in bed staring at the ceiling. She'd survived another test, proved herself useful again. But useful wasn't the same as free, and she was starting to forget what freedom felt like. 3 months into the marriage, Lena stopped counting days. Time moved differently now, measured in lessons mastered and dinners survived and moments when she forgot to hate the sound of Victor's footsteps in the hall. She spoke Italian without thinking about it, could read the tension in a room before it escalated, knew which of Victor's business associates were genuinely dangerous and which just played the part. She was adapting. The realization bothered her more than it should have. "You seem distracted," Victor said one morning over breakfast. He'd been in Milan for a week, returned late the night before without warning. "Just tired. You sleep poorly?" "Sometimes." Lena stirred sugar into her espresso. "The bed's too big." Victor's expression flickered with something she couldn't name. "I can have a smaller one brought in." "That's not what I meant." "Then what did you mean?" Lena looked at him directly. "I meant I'm alone too much. Everyone here works for you. Signora Rossi is kind, but she's staff. Marco trains me, but he doesn't talk. The tutors come and go. You travel constantly. I exist in this villa like a piece of furniture between your trips. You want company. I want a life that feels less like waiting." Victor set down his coffee cup with careful precision. "What would you like to do?" "I don't know. Something. Anything that isn't just preparing to stand beside you at the next performance. Lena pushed her plate away. You said I'd have freedom once we were married. This doesn't feel like freedom. You are not locked in your room. You have access to the grounds, the town, resources. What more do you need? Purpose. Something that's mine. She met his eyes. You have your business, your empire, your whole world of things that matter. What do I have? Italian lessons and dinner parties where I smile on command? Victor was quiet for a long moment. Then he stood, walked to the window overlooking the garden. His back was to her when he spoke. There's a charity in Florence. They work with children from difficult circumstances. Orphans, refugees, those whose families cannot care for them. He turned slightly. They need volunteers, people who can teach English, help with education programs. I have supported them financially for years. If you wish, I can arrange for you to work with them. Lena stared at him. You're serious? Why would I not be? Because it means letting me leave the villa regularly, interact with people you don't control, have something separate from you. Yes, all of those things. Victor returned to the table. You were correct. You need purpose beyond being my wife. I recognize this. The charity is supervised, safe, and provides work worth doing, if you want it. It was the first real choice he'd offered her since the wedding. Yes, Lena said. I want it. Then it is arranged. You begin Monday. Marco will drive you. 4 hours, 3 days per week to start. He picked up his tablet, already moving to the next thing. Do not make me regret this, Lena. I won't. She meant it. The charity was housed in a converted monastery on the edge of Florence. Stone walls, high ceilings, the smell of old buildings and new paint. Children's artwork covered the hallways, crayon drawings of houses and families and dreams that might never materialize. The director was a woman named Sister Teresa, who looked too young to be running anything, but had the kind of authority that came from caring more than everyone else in the room. Mrs. Romano, she said, shaking Lena's hand, your husband spoke very highly of your willingness to help. Just Lena is fine. Lena, then, come. I will show you where you are needed most. The children ranged from 5 to 15. Some spoke English already, others knew maybe 3 words. Lena's job was to help bridge that gap. Teach basic vocabulary, practice conversation, make learning feel less like work. The first day was chaos. Kids who wouldn't sit still, others who wouldn't speak at all. One boy threw a book at her head. She ducked and kept going. By the end of the week, she'd learned all their names. By the end of the month, they'd stopped testing her. You are good with them, Sister Teresa said one afternoon. They were watching the children play in the courtyard during break. They respond to you. I know what it's like to have your life decided by someone else, Lena said. Makes it easier to understand where they're coming from. Sister Teresa gave her a look that saw too much. Your husband is a powerful man. Yes. Power can be wielded many ways, Teresa said one afternoon. They were watching the children play in the courtyard during break. They respond to you. I know what it's like to have your life decided by someone else, Lena said. Makes it easier to understand where they're coming from. Sister Teresa gave her a look that saw too much. Your husband is a powerful man. Yes. Power can be wielded many ways, for good or for harm. I'm aware. I am certain you are. The older woman touched Lena's shoulder briefly. Thank you for being here. Whatever your reasons, the children benefit. That is what matters. Lena threw herself into the work. Planned lessons, created games, found ways to make English feel less foreign. The kids opened up slowly, told her about their lives in fragments, where they came from, what they'd lost, what they hoped to find. She saw herself in them more than she wanted to admit. One girl in particular, Sophia, 9 years old, dark eyes that had seen too much, attached herself to Lena like a shadow. She'd come from Syria, lost her parents in ways no one would specify, ended up in Italy through channels that probably weren't legal. Why do you help us? Sophia asked one day. Her English was getting better. You are rich. You do not need to be here. Maybe I need to be here more than you think. That does not make sense. Yeah, well, not everything does, kid. Sophia considered this. Your husband, he is the one who gives money to this place? Yes. Is he good man? Lena hesitated. He's complicated. My father was complicated too. He yelled a lot, but he loved me. Sophia picked at the corner of her workbook. I think maybe good and bad can be same person sometimes. Out of the mouths of babes. Yeah, Lena said quietly. Maybe they can. She told Victor about the children over dinner that night. About Sophia and the boy who'd thrown the book, and another kid who was so smart he could probably teach the class himself if someone gave him a chance. Victor listened without interrupting. When she finished, he said, "You are happy there." "I'm useful there. It's different. Happy, useful. These can coexist." He refilled her wine glass. "You have changed since you started. You are less—" He searched for the word. "Brittle." "I was brittle?" "You were surviving. Now you are living." The distinction is significant. Lena studied him across the table. He looked tired tonight, the kind of tired that came from carrying weight no one else could see. "Are you okay?" she asked. Victor's eyebrows rose slightly. "Why do you ask?" "Because you look exhausted, and you've been traveling more than usual, and you just gave me an actual compliment, which means something's wrong." A slight smile. "Nothing is wrong. Business is simply demanding at the moment." "What kind of business?" "The kind you do not need to know about." "Right. Because I'm just the decorative wife who teaches orphans in her spare time." "You are the wife who is intelligent enough to recognize when certain questions should not be asked." Victor's voice was gentle but firm. "I keep you separate from my work for your protection, Lena. Not because I think less of you." "Protection from what?" "From knowledge that could get you killed if the wrong people decided you were a liability." The words settled like ice in her chest. "That's comforting." "It is honest. You wanted honesty from me. This is what it looks like." He stood, collecting his plate. "I have calls to make. Finish your dinner." He left her alone in the dining room with half a glass of wine and the reminder that the beautiful life she was building had bodies in its foundation. 2 weeks later, Victor announced they were attending a gala in Rome. High profile. Politicians, business leaders, the kind of people who pretended not to know what Victor actually did for a living. "You will need a new dress," he said. "Signor Rossi has arranged appointments with designers. Choose what you like." "What's the occasion?" "Annual fundraiser for economic development in southern Italy. Anyone attends. We need to be seen." "More performance art." "Yes, but this performance matters. Carlo will be there. Others who would benefit from my absence. We show strength through presence." The dress Lena chose was midnight blue, simple lines, nothing flashy, the kind of elegant that whispered money without screaming it. Victor nodded approval when he saw it. "Perfect. You are learning." "Learning what?" "How to dress like I belong in your world. How to dress like you own it. There is a difference." They flew to Rome in a private jet. Lena had stopped being surprised by the casual displays of wealth. The jet had leather seats and a bedroom and a flight attendant who appeared the moment you thought about wanting something. The gala was held in a palazzo that made Victor's villa look modest. Frescoed ceilings, marble everything, chandeliers that probably required their own structural support. Women dripped with jewels that could fund small countries. Men wore tuxedos that cost more than cars. Lena took Victor's arm and walked into it like she'd been doing this her whole life. The crowd parted slightly when they entered. Not dramatically, just enough to acknowledge that Victor Romano had arrived and brought his young American wife. Eyes tracked them. Conversations paused and resumed. The assessment was instant and thorough. "Smile," Victor murmured. "You're enjoying yourself." "I'm really not." "Pretend. You're excellent at it now." They worked the room. Victor introduced her to politicians who pretended not to know his real business, to CEOs who absolutely knew and didn't care, to old money families who looked at Lena like she was a stain on their genetic legacy. She smiled through all of it. Carlo appeared an hour in, immaculate in white dinner jacket, a woman on his arm who looked like she'd stepped out of a fashion magazine. "Victor, Lena, what a pleasure." He kissed Lena's hand again, always with the hand kissing. "Allow me to introduce Valentina, my companion for the evening." Valentina looked Lena up and down with practiced dismissal. "Charming dress." "Thank you. You too." "This old thing?" Valentina touched the diamonds at her throat. "Carlo insists I wear his gifts, so demanding." Carlo laughed. I simply appreciate beauty when I possess it. The word possess hung there like a challenge. Victor's hand tightened fractionally on Lena's back. How is business in the north, Carlo? Thriving, expanding, actually. We have been acquiring new interests, diversifying. Carlo accepted champagne from a passing waiter. Perhaps we should discuss collaboration. There are opportunities that benefit from partnership. Perhaps, when the time is right. Of course, when the time is right. Carlo's smile never wavered. Enjoy the evening, my friends. He drifted away with Valentina. Lena waited until they were out of earshot. What was that about? Territory. He wants access to my operations in the south. I am not inclined to share. Victor guided her toward the bar. He will push. I will decline. Eventually, someone will make a move. This is how our world functions. Sounds exhausting. It is the price of power. You learn to manage the exhaustion. They found seats for dinner at a table with a banking executive and his wife, a journalist who wrote puff pieces for political magazines, and a widow whose family owned half of Sicily. Lena made conversation, laughed at appropriate moments, and watched Victor navigate the social chess game with the same precision he brought to everything. Halfway through the main course, the journalist turned to Lena. So, Mrs. Romano, how are you finding life in Italy? It must be quite different from America. It's beautiful, the culture, the history. I'm still learning, but I love it. And the language? Italian is so difficult for Americans. I'm managing. My tutors are patient. Well, Lena took a sip of wine. Actually, I've been volunteering at a children's charity in Florence, teaching English. That's helped with the language more than anything else. The widow perked up. A charity? Which one? Sister Teresa's place. It's a wonderful program. Oh, I know Teresa. Remarkable woman, doing extraordinary work with those poor children. The widow touched Lena's arm. How lovely that you are contributing. Victor, you must be proud of your wife's charitable spirit. Victor inclined his head. Very much so. The conversation shifted to charity work, to the state of refugee services in Italy, to politics that Lena only half understood. But something had changed. The widow looked at her differently now, less like a curiosity, more like a person. After dinner, there was dancing. Victor led Lena onto the floor with the kind of practiced ease that suggested expensive lessons at some point in his youth. You did well at dinner, he said, as they moved to the music. I told the truth. About the charity. Yes, it was strategically sound. The widow is influential in social circles. Her approval matters. I wasn't being strategic. I was just talking about something I care about. Victor looked at her, really looked, and something in his expression shifted. Even better then. They danced in silence for a moment. Lena realized this was the closest they'd been since the wedding kiss. His hand was warm on her back. He smelled like expensive cologne, and something underneath that was just him. You're a good dancer, she said. My mother insisted on lessons. She believed proper manners would open doors that money alone could not. A pause. She was correct. Is she still alive? No, she died when I was 23, cancer. His voice was carefully neutral. She never knew what I became. That is probably for the best. It was the most personal thing he'd ever shared. Lena didn't know what to do with it. I'm sorry. It was a long time ago. Victor navigated them through a turn. Your mother? You've never mentioned her. Left when I was 6. Couldn't handle my father's drinking. Sent birthday cards for a few years, then stopped. I don't even know where she is now. So we are both orphans in our way. I guess so. The music shifted to something slower. Victor pulled her fractionally closer. Not inappropriate for public, but closer than necessary. Lena didn't pull away. This is strange, she said quietly. What is? This. Dancing with you, having an almost normal conversation, forgetting for a minute that you bought me. I did not buy you. I acquired you through a contractual arrangement with your father. That's literally the same thing. Context matters. But there was something like humor in his voice. Do you wish to stop dancing? No, Lena admitted. This is the most normal I've felt in months. They stayed on the floor through 2 more songs. When they finally returned to their table, Lena caught Valentina watching them with an expression that looked almost like envy. The gala ended after midnight. They rode back to the hotel in a car that felt too quiet after all the noise. "You surprised me tonight," Victor said. "How?" "You were yourself, not the version I expected you to present, just you. It was effective." "I'm not sure if that's a compliment or an observation." "Both." He looked at her in the dim light of the car. "You are becoming someone I did not anticipate, Lena. Someone more than I planned for." "Is that a problem?" "I have not decided yet." They didn't speak again until they reached the hotel. Separate rooms, as always. Victor never pushed for more than she'd agreed to, never demanded anything beyond appearance and compliance. It should have made things easier. Somehow, it didn't. Lena lay in the hotel bed, staring at the ceiling, replaying the evening, the dancing, the conversation, the way Victor had looked at her like she was more than an asset. It would be easier if he was cruel, if he fit the monster role her mind had assigned him that first day. But he wasn't cruel. He was complicated, calculating, capable of violence she'd never seen but knew existed. And increasingly, he was someone she didn't entirely hate. That terrified her more than anything. She must have fallen asleep eventually because she woke to pounding on her door. Disoriented, still in her dress from the night before, Lena stumbled to answer it. Marco stood in the hallway, his face tight. "Get dressed. Now. We are leaving." "What's wrong?" "I will explain in the car. You have 5 minutes." He disappeared before she could ask more questions. Lena threw on jeans and a sweater, grabbed her bag, and met him in the hall. He rushed her to the elevator, down to the lobby, into a car idling at the curb. Victor was already inside. He looked like he hadn't slept. His jaw was tight. Something dangerous moved behind his eyes. "What happened?" Lena asked as the car pulled away fast enough to make tires squeal. "There was an incident at the villa." Victor's voice was clipped. "An attempted breach. The guards contained it, but there was damage." "What kind of damage?" "The kind that requires us to return immediately. Marco will take you back to Florence. To the charity. You will stay there until I send for you." "I'm not going to the charity. If something happened at the villa, you will do exactly as I tell you." Victor's tone left no room for argument. "This is not negotiable. You are not safe at the villa right now." "Then where are you going?" "To handle the situation." "Victor," he cut her off with a look. "This is my world, Lena. The part I have kept you away from. The part that is ugly and violent and has no place for questions. You will go with Marco. You will stay where he puts you. You will not contact anyone. Do you understand?" Lena's hands clenched in her lap. "Fine." "I mean it. This is not a game. People died last night. More will die before this is finished. I need you safe and out of the way." The car stopped at a different hotel. Marco got out, opened Lena's door. "Wait," she said to Victor. "Are you going to be okay?" Something flickered in his expression. "Yes, I have survived worse." "That's not comforting." "It is the truth." He reached out, touched her cheek briefly. The gesture was so unexpected Lena froze. "Go. I will send for you when it is safe." Marco rushed her inside the hotel, up to a room on the top floor. 2 more guards were already there, stationed by the windows. "You stay here," Marco said. "Do not leave. Do not call anyone. I will be outside the door." "For how long?" "As long as it takes." He left. Lena paced the room, her mind racing. Someone had attacked the villa. People were dead. Victor was walking into something dangerous enough that he'd hidden her away like evidence. She should have been relieved, safe in a hotel while he dealt with whatever violent aftermath came from his criminal empire. Instead, she was terrified. Not for herself, for him. The realization hit her like cold water. Somewhere in the past months, Victor had stopped being just her captor. He'd become something else. Someone she worried about. Someone whose absence felt wrong. She sat on the edge of the bed and tried to figure out when exactly she'd started caring whether he lived or died. The answer didn't come. Hours passed. Marco brought food she didn't eat. The guards changed shifts. The sun moved across the sky outside windows she couldn't open. Finally, near midnight, her phone rang. A number she didn't recognize. "Hello?" "It is handled." Victor's voice sounded rough, exhausted. Marco will bring you home in the morning. Home? You mean the villa? Yes. Is it safe? It will be by the time you arrive. The men responsible have been addressed. Additional security is in place. You have nothing to fear. Lena closed her eyes. Did you? She didn't know how to finish the question. Yes. No elaboration. Just confirmation that whatever needed doing had been done. Get some rest. I will see you tomorrow. Victor? Yes? I'm glad you're okay. Silence on the other end, then, as am I. Good night, Lena. He hung up. Lena sat in the hotel room, staring at her phone, and tried to reconcile the man who'd just killed people with the man who'd danced with her hours earlier. They were the same person. That was the problem. The same person who could be gentle and brutal, who could fund charities and end lives, who could look at her like she mattered, and then vanish into violence without hesitation. She should hate him for it. She should be planning escape. Instead, she was sitting in a hotel room relieved that he'd survived, counting hours until she could see him again, and wondering when exactly her prison had started feeling like home. Marco drove her back to the villa the next morning. The damage wasn't visible from the outside, but new guards were everywhere. More cameras. The gate had been reinforced. Whatever had happened, Victor was making sure it wouldn't happen again. Signora Rossi met her at the door, relief obvious on her face. Thank the saints, we were so worried. What happened? Men came in the night, tried to break in through the east wing. The guards stopped them, but she shook her head. Mr. Romano is in his study. He asked for you when you arrived. Lena found him behind his desk, looking at security footage on multiple screens. He'd changed clothes, but there were shadows under his eyes that hadn't been there 2 days ago. You are back, he said without looking up. Yeah. Are you going to tell me what happened? Carlo made his move, sent men to attack the villa, thinking I was still in Rome. He miscalculated. My security was prepared. Victor finally looked at her. 3 of his men are dead, 2 of mine. Carlo is currently reconsidering his strategic approach. You killed them. I defended what is mine. There is a difference. Is there? Victor stood, walked around the desk to stand in front of her, close enough that she could see the exhaustion in his face, the tension in his shoulders. You were right to ask if I was okay, he said quietly. I am not. I am tired and angry and frustrated that Carlo forced this escalation. But I'm also relieved that you were not here, that you were safe. He touched her face again, the same gesture from the car. I have kept you separate from this part of my life. I will continue to do so. But I need you to understand. There will be times when violence finds us anyway. When I must be someone you do not want to know. Can you accept that? Lena looked at him, really looked, saw the man who'd bought her and the man who'd given her purpose. The killer and the dancer. The monster and the person who worried about her safety. I don't know, she said honestly, but I'm still here. That has to count for something. It counts for everything. He kissed her then. Not like at the wedding, not performative or quick, real, deep. The kind of kiss that meant something neither of them had words for. Lena kissed him back before she could think better of it. Her hands found his shoulders. His hands settled on her waist. They stood in his study, kissing like teenagers while security footage played silently on screens behind them. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, Victor rested his forehead against hers. This complicates things, he said. Yeah, it really does. Do you regret it? Lena thought about everything she'd lost, everything she'd gained, the person she'd been, and the person she was becoming. Ask me tomorrow, she said. Victor laughed, an actual laugh, and pulled her close. Fair enough. They stood there in the study, wrapped around each other, while guards patrolled outside and bodies were buried somewhere Lena didn't want to know about, and Carlo plotted his next move from wherever he was licking his wounds. The world outside was violent and complicated and dangerous. But in that moment, in Victor's arms, Lena felt something she hadn't felt since before her father's plane had landed in Italy. She felt safe. It wouldn't last. She knew that. But for now, it was enough. Things shifted after that kiss. Not dramatically. Victor didn't suddenly become a different person. Lena didn't wake up in love. But something between them had cracked open, and neither of them seemed interested in sealing it back up. He touched her more now. Small things. A hand on her shoulder when he passed behind her chair at breakfast. Fingers brushing hers when he handed her wine at dinner. Nothing demanding, just contact that said she was real to him, not just functional. Lena found herself gravitating toward him in return, sitting closer on the terrace when they had coffee, asking about his day and actually wanting to know, learning to read the tension in his jaw that meant business had gone badly, the slight relaxation in his shoulders that meant it had gone well. They were becoming something. She wasn't sure what, wasn't sure she wanted to name it yet. "You are different with him now," Signora Rossi observed one afternoon. They were in the kitchen. Lena had started helping with meal planning, partly because she was bored and partly because she'd discovered she actually enjoyed it. "Different how?" "Less guarded. You look at him like he is a person, not a problem to solve." The older woman chopped vegetables with practiced efficiency. "He looks at you the same way." "Is that bad?" "That depends. Do you trust him?" Lena considered the question. "I trust him to keep me safe. I trust him to keep his word. I don't trust him to tell me everything or to stop being what he is." "That is more trust than most wives in your position have. Use it wisely." Signora Rossi slid the vegetables into a pan. "Men like Mr. Romano do not give their hearts easily, but when they do, they are loyal to the point of destruction. Remember that." The words stayed with Lena through the rest of the day. Through dinner with Victor where they talked about nothing important and everything at once. Through the evening when he worked in his study and she read in the library, close enough to feel his presence in the next room. That night she dreamed about her father for the first time in weeks. In the dream he was apologizing, trying to explain why he'd done it, but his voice kept fading until she couldn't hear him anymore. When she woke up, her face was wet. She found Victor in the kitchen at 3 a.m, drinking scotch and reading something on his tablet. "Cannot sleep?" he asked without looking up. "Bad dream." He set down the tablet, poured a second glass of scotch, and slid it across the counter to her. Lena climbed onto a bar stool and took a sip. It burned going down. "Your father?" Victor asked. "How did you know?" "You get a certain look when you think about him. Anger and grief in equal measure." He swirled his own glass. "It is the same look I have when I think of mine." "I thought you said your father wasn't part of your life." "He was not. He left when I was 8, walked out one day and never returned. My mother worked 3 jobs to keep us fed. She died exhausted and alone while I was building an empire he would have been ashamed of." Victor took a long drink. "I think about him sometimes. Wonder if he is alive. If he knows what I became. If he regrets leaving." "Do you want him to regret it?" "I want him to know that we survived without him. That his absence did not destroy us. That would be enough." Lena understood that more than she wanted to. "My father sent me an email last week, through some account I didn't know he had, asking how I was, if I was happy, if I needed anything." "What did you say?" "Nothing. I deleted it." She finished the scotch, felt the warmth spread through her chest. "I don't know what he wants from me. Forgiveness? Absolution? Proof that selling his daughter worked out okay so he can sleep at night? Probably all of those things." Victor refilled both their glasses. Weak men always want forgiveness for their weakness. It costs them nothing and makes them feel better about the destruction they leave behind. "You hate weak people." "I hate people who make others pay for their failures. There is a difference." He looked at her directly. "Your father was weak, but you are not. You are stronger than he deserves." The compliment hit harder than the scotch. Lena blinked back tears she refused to let fall. "I don't feel strong. I feel like I'm pretending to be someone I'm not." "We are all pretending, Lena. The trick is pretending so well that it becomes real." Victor came around the counter, stood close enough that she could feel his warmth. "You think I woke up knowing how to be this? I learned, same as you are learning. The difference is I had no one to help me. You have me." "Is that what you are? Help?" "I am whatever you need me to be, within reason." A slight smile. "I am still who I am. I will not apologize for that." "I'm not asking you to." "Good, because I would refuse." He touched her face, thumb brushing away a tear she hadn't realized had fallen. "Come. You should sleep. Tomorrow we have that meeting with the Economic Council. You need to be sharp." Since when do I go to Economic Council meetings? Since I decided you should. You're my wife. You should understand all aspects of my business, even the boring legitimate ones. Lena followed him back upstairs. At her bedroom door, Victor paused. The nightmares will pass, he said quietly. Your father will fade until he is just a memory. Someone who existed once but matters less each day. This I know from experience. Does it get easier? No, but you get stronger, which amounts to the same thing. He kissed her forehead and disappeared into his own room. Lena stood in the hallway for a long moment before going to bed. This time, she didn't dream at all. The Economic Council meeting was exactly as boring as Victor had promised. Men in suits talking about development projects and infrastructure investments and tax incentives. Lena sat beside Victor, understanding maybe half of what was discussed, but watching how he operated. He was different here than at the criminal gatherings. More measured, more political. He spoke less, listened more, and when he did contribute, it was with the kind of careful precision that moved conversations without appearing to push. Afterward, one of the council members, an older man named Giovanni, who had the look of someone born into politics, approached them. Mrs. Romano, a pleasure to finally meet you. Victor speaks very highly of your work with Sister Teresa's charity. Thank you. The children are incredible. Indeed. My wife sits on the board. She has mentioned you several times. Your approach to education, your dedication. Giovanni smiled. We are always looking for passionate people to join our initiatives. Would you consider serving on the education committee? We meet monthly, advise on policy, allocate resources. Lena glanced at Victor. He gave the slightest nod. I'd be honored, she said. Excellent. I will have my assistant send details. Giovanni shook Victor's hand. You have chosen well, my friend. Beauty and substance, a rare combination. When they were alone in the car heading home, Lena turned to Victor. You set that up. I mentioned to Giovanni that you had relevant experience and passion for education. The rest was his decision. You're giving me more access to your legitimate operations. I'm giving you opportunities to build something beyond being my wife. Is that not what you wanted? Yes, but why? Victor was quiet for a moment. Because you are capable of more than I initially planned for. Because keeping you locked away serves no purpose beyond my control, and control without reason is cruelty. Because, he stopped, seemed to reconsider his words. Because you deserve it. Lena looked at him, this man who'd bought her, and was now systematically giving her pieces of autonomy. Nothing about their relationship made sense. Everything about it felt inevitable. Thank you, she said quietly. Do not thank me. Earn it. Make the committee meetings matter. Make a difference. Prove that my faith in you is justified. No pressure. Significant pressure, but you thrive under pressure. I have observed this. He wasn't wrong. Lena threw herself into the committee work with the same intensity she brought to the charity, read proposals until her eyes hurt, learned policy frameworks, asked questions that made the older committee members take her seriously instead of dismissing her as Victor's decorative wife. Within 2 months, she'd helped restructure funding for 3 schools in underserved areas. Within 4, she was leading a subcommittee on refugee education. Victor attended her presentations when his schedule allowed. He didn't comment much, but she'd catch him watching with something that looked like pride. Sophia noticed the change too. You are different now, the girl said one afternoon at the charity. They were working on a reading assignment, but Sophia was distracted. You smile more. You are less sad. I'm less sad? When you came here first time, your eyes were sad. Like mine. Like you lost something important. Sophia touched Lena's hand. Now you look like you found something. Maybe not what you lost, but something new. Lena hugged the kid before she could stop herself. Sophia squeaked in surprise, then hugged back fierce enough to crack ribs. You are a good teacher, Sophia whispered, and good person. I think maybe your husband knows this. Maybe that is why you smile. Out of the mouths of babes, again. That evening, Lena found Victor on the terrace. He was on the phone, speaking rapid Italian with someone who was clearly making him angry. She started to leave, but he waved her over, ended the call abruptly. Carlo? She guessed. One of his intermediaries. Making threats disguised as negotiations. He is becoming tedious. Victor set down his phone with more force than necessary. I am tired of managing men who mistake persistence for strength. What does he want? Access to shipping routes I control. He believes the attack on the villa demonstrated his willingness to escalate. He is wrong. Victor's jaw was tight. There will be another meeting soon, a summit of sorts, all the major players. Carlo will make his move there. He will demand concessions or offer violence. I will refuse both. And then what? Then we will see who blinks first. Lena sat beside him, close enough that their shoulders touched. Are you worried? I am prepared. These are not the same thing. He looked at her. You will not attend this meeting. It is too dangerous. Okay. Victor's eyebrows rose. No argument? You said it's dangerous. I believe you. I'm not stupid. No, you are decidedly not stupid. He took her hand, laced their fingers together. The gesture was casual, intimate, like they'd been doing it for years. When did you stop being afraid of me? I'm not sure I have. You still scare me sometimes, just in different ways now. Different how? Lena looked at their joined hands. Before, I was afraid you'd hurt me. Lock me up, treat me like property. Now I'm afraid of what it means that I don't want to leave. That when you're gone, I miss you. That I'm building a life in a cage and starting to forget it's a cage at all. Is that what this is to you? Still a cage? I don't know what it is. That's what scares me most. Victor lifted her hand, pressed his lips to her knuckles. I could tell you that you are free to leave. That you have been for months. That the guards are not there to keep you in, but to keep danger out. Would you believe me? No. Why not? Because if I'm free to leave, that means I'm staying by choice, and I'm not ready to admit that yet. Fair enough? He released her hand but didn't move away. I can wait. I'm a patient man when the outcome matters. They sat in silence as the sun set over the Tuscan hills, painting everything gold and red. Lena thought about freedom and choice, and all the ways a person could convince themselves they were happy in circumstances they'd never chosen. Maybe it didn't matter. Maybe happiness counted regardless of how you got there. Or maybe she was just getting really good at lying to herself. The summit was in 2 weeks. Victor prepared for it the way generals prepared for war. Strategic meetings, contingency plans, information gathering from sources Lena didn't ask about. He was tense, distracted, more prone to snapping at minor irritations. Lena gave him space, focused on her own work. The committee had a major funding vote coming up. Sister Teresa needed help with a grant application. Sophia was struggling with advanced reading and needed extra tutoring, normal problems, the kind that didn't involve violence or death or criminal empires. 3 days before the summit, Victor came to her room late at night. Lena was already in bed, reading. He knocked softly, waited for permission before entering. Cannot sleep? She asked, setting down her book. Thinking too much. He stood in the doorway like he wasn't sure he should come closer. May I? Lena pulled back the covers on the other side of the bed. Yeah. He slid in beside her, still fully dressed, and lay staring at the ceiling. The bed was big enough that they weren't touching, but she could feel his presence like heat. Talk to me, Lena said. About what? Anything, whatever's keeping you awake. Victor was quiet for so long she thought he might not answer. Then, I am tired of this life sometimes. The constant positioning, the violence that solves nothing but creates more problems. The weight of knowing that one wrong decision could destroy everything I have built. Then why keep doing it? Because I do not know how to be anything else. Because this is what I am good at. Because stopping would require admitting that perhaps my mother was right, that there were other paths I could have chosen. He turned his head to look at her. Do you think less of me for saying that? No, I think you sound human. It's weird, but not bad. A slight smile. Weird. You have to admit vulnerable honesty isn't your usual thing. I am making an exception. You seem to inspire them. He reached over, took her hand again. After the summit, things will change. Either I will have secured my position and can begin stepping back from certain operations, or I will be fighting a war that could last years. Either way, our lives will not be the same. Is this you asking me to choose? Stay or go? This is me telling you that if you want to leave, the time is now. before things become more complicated, before you are pulled deeper into something you never asked for. His grip on her hand tightened. I would not blame you. I would help you. Money, papers, a life somewhere safe. You could disappear, start over. Lena's heart was pounding. Are you asking me to leave? I am offering you the choice I never gave you before. Real choice. Not coercion, not obligation. Just the simple question, do you want to stay? She should say no, should take the out he was offering and run as far as possible from the violence and danger and moral complexity of his world. Instead, she rolled onto her side to face him. If I stay, what does that mean? For us? It means you are choosing this, me, the life we are building. It means I stop treating our marriage as a business arrangement and start treating it as something real. Victor's voice was rough. It means I would be yours, Lena, fully, completely, in ways I have never been anyone's. And if I go, then I let you, and I spend the rest of my life wondering what might have been if I had been a better man from the start. Lena looked at him in the dim light from her bedside lamp, saw the vulnerability he was offering, the risk he was taking. This man who controlled everything, giving her the power to destroy him. I need to think, she said. I know. That is why I am telling you now. You have 3 days to decide. After that, the window closes. Things become too dangerous for you to leave safely. He kissed her forehead, slid out of bed, and left her alone with the biggest decision of her life. Lena didn't sleep that night, didn't sleep the next night either. She went through the motions, taught her classes at the charity, attended a committee meeting, had dinner with Victor where they talked about nothing important and everything hung heavy in the air between them. She made lists of pros and cons, tried to logic her way through it. The cons were obvious. He was a criminal. She'd been coerced. Nothing about their beginning was okay. The pros were harder to quantify. Safety, purpose, the way he looked at her, the life she was building, the fact that she'd stopped feeling like a prisoner months ago. On the second day, she went to see Sister Teresa. You are troubled, the older woman said. They were in her office, a small room filled with paperwork and photographs of children who'd passed through the program. I need advice, but I can't tell you the specifics. Then tell me what you can. Lena chose her words carefully. If you had the chance to leave a situation that started badly but has become something good, would you? Even if leaving meant giving up everything you've built? Sister Teresa was quiet, hands folded on her desk. That depends. Is the situation itself harmful, or was only the beginning harmful? The beginning was terrible. The situation now is complicated, but not harmful, maybe even good. And if you stay, do you do so freely, or because you feel you have no other choice? That was the question, wasn't it? I'm not sure I know the difference anymore, Lena admitted. Then that is what you must determine. Not whether to stay or go, but whether your choice to stay would be truly yours. Sister Teresa smiled gently. You are stronger than you think, child. Trust yourself. The answer is there if you are brave enough to look. Lena left the charity more confused than when she'd arrived, drove back to the villa through the Tuscan countryside that had stopped feeling foreign, walked through rooms that had stopped feeling like a prison. She found Victor in his study, reviewing documents for the summit. He looked up when she entered. You have decided? He asked. Not yet, but I have questions. Ask. If I stay, do I get the truth? All of it? About what you do, who you are, the things you've done? Yes. No more secrets beyond what is necessary for your safety. Do I get a say in decisions that affect both of us? Within reason. I will not put your safety to a vote. But otherwise, yes. Do I get to keep my work? The charity, the committee, the things that are mine? You get to expand them if you wish. I will support whatever you want to build. Lena paced his study, thinking. And if somewhere down the line I change my mind, if this stops working, Victor set down his papers. Then we discuss it like adults. I will not hold you against your will, Lena. That was never the plan long term. I wanted a wife for appearances, yes, but I wanted a partner more. You cannot force partnership. It has to be chosen. You're really giving me this? Real choice? I am really giving you this. Real choice, real partnership, real risk that you might leave and break something in me I did not know could break. He stood, came around the desk. I am asking you to choose me, Lena. Not because you have to, because you want to. And if the answer is no, I will accept it. But I need you to know, I want you to stay. More than I have wanted anything in a very long time. There it was, the truth stripped bare. No manipulation, no coercion, just a man asking a woman to choose him. Lena looked at this person who'd bought her and freed her and complicated every simple thing about right and wrong. This man who was a criminal and a partner and someone she'd started to care about despite every reason not to. I need one more day, she said. You have it. That night, Lena went to her room and did something she hadn't done since before the wedding. She called her father. He answered on the second ring. Lena? Honey, is that you? His voice cracked something open in her chest. Yeah, it's me. Oh, thank God, I've been so worried. Are you okay? Are you safe? Did he hurt you? I'm fine, Lena sat on her bed, pulled her knees to her chest. I need to ask you something, and I need you to be honest. Anything, sweetheart. Anything. When you sold me to Victor, did you know what he was? Did you know what kind of life you were sending me into? Silence. Too long. Dad? I knew enough, he said finally. His voice was small. I knew he was powerful, connected, that he could make my debts go away. I told myself he'd treat you well, that you'd have a better life than I could give you. You sold me to save yourself. Yes. A broken sound. Yes. And I hate myself for it every single day. I wake up and I see your face and I know what I did and I can't. He was crying now. I can't take it back, Lena. I would if I could. I would do anything, but I can't. No, you can't. Lena wiped her own tears away. I called because I need to know something. If you could go back, knowing everything that's happened, would you still do it? Would you still trade me for your freedom? No. Never. I would face whatever came rather than sacrifice you again. Why? Because you're my daughter, because I love you, because some prices are too high even for survival. Lena closed her eyes. I needed to hear that. I needed to know that you regret it. I regret it more than I can say. Are you... He hesitated. Are you happy? Is he good to you? The question was complicated, the answer more so. He's given me choices, Lena said slowly. Opportunities. A life that's mine. It's not what I would have chosen at the start, but it's become something real. Do you love him? Did she? Lena turned the question over in her mind. Love felt too simple for what she felt. Too clean for something born from coercion and survival. But something was there. Something that felt like it could become love if she let it. I don't know yet, she admitted, but I think I could. Maybe I already do. That's why I called. I need to know if choosing to stay makes me weak like you were weak, or if it makes me something else. It makes you brave, her father said, braver than I ever was. You're choosing your life, Lena. That's not weakness. That's strength I never had. They talked for another hour. It didn't fix anything, didn't erase what he'd done or the betrayal she'd felt, but it gave her something, closure maybe, permission to stop letting his choices define hers. When she hung up, she knew what she was going to do. She found Victor on the terrace. He was smoking a cigarette, something she'd only seen him do when he was stressed. He stubbed it out when he saw her. "You're here for your answer," he said. "Yeah." "And?" Lena walked to stand in front of him, close enough to touch. "I'm staying, not because I have to, not because I'm afraid to leave, because I want to see what we become when we're not pretending anymore." The relief in his face was immediate and overwhelming. He pulled her into his arms, held her so tight she could barely breathe. "You are certain?" he asked against her hair. "No, I'm terrified, but I'm certain I want to try." Victor pulled back enough to look at her. "Then we try. Together, as partners, as equals. As something," Lena said. "We'll figure out what." He kissed her then, deep and consuming and full of promise. When they broke apart, both breathing hard, Victor pressed his forehead to hers. I will not fail you, he said. Yes, you will. We'll both fail each other sometimes. That's how this works. But we keep choosing it anyway. When did you become wise? When I stopped being a victim and started being a participant. They stayed on the terrace until late, talking through what came next. The summit, the future, the million small details of building a real partnership from the wreckage of how they'd started. Lena fell asleep that night in Victor's arms for the first time, not because she had to, because she wanted to, because she'd chosen him. And that made all the difference. The morning of the summit, Victor woke her before sunrise. I need to leave early, he said, already dressed in a dark suit that made him look dangerous. Additional security measures. I will be gone most of the day. Lena sat up, rubbing sleep from her eyes. Be careful. Always. He kissed her forehead, then her lips. Stay inside today. Marco and extra guards will be here. Do not answer the door for anyone. Do not leave the grounds. You're scaring me. Good. Fear keeps you alert. Alert keeps you alive. He touched her face. I will call when it is finished. If you do not hear from me by midnight, Marco has instructions. What instructions? To get you somewhere safe. Somewhere Carlo and his people cannot find you. Victor's voice was steady, but his eyes were worried. I do not expect it to come to that, but I plan for every possibility. Victor, I will come back to you, I promise. One more kiss, longer this time. Stay safe, Lena. He left before she could argue. Lena listened to his footsteps fade, the front door close, the car pull away. Then she got up and paced her room like a caged animal. The villa felt wrong without him. Too quiet, too empty. She tried reading, couldn't focus. Tried working on committee proposals, gave up after rereading the same paragraph 5 times. Finally, she went to find Signora Rossi. The older woman was in the kitchen, preparing food that no one would eat. Stress cooking. Lena recognized the behavior. How many of these has he been to? Lena asked, sliding onto a stool. Summits like this? Perhaps a dozen in the years I have worked for him. They always end the same way. Which is? Victor comes home. His enemies do not. Signora Rossi's hands never stopped moving. He is very good at surviving, Mrs. Romano. Do not forget this. I'm trying not to. The day crawled by. Lena ate lunch she didn't taste. Wandered the villa checking locks on windows that were already locked. Counted guards on the property, 12, which was triple the normal number. By evening, she was ready to climb the walls. She tried calling Victor. It went straight to voicemail. Tried again an hour later. Same result. At 8, Marco knocked on her door. Any word? She asked immediately. No? But this is normal. The summit runs late. They negotiate, they argue, they posture. Mr. Romano will call when there is news. You're not worried? Marco's expression was carefully neutral. I am always worried when Mr. Romano is in a room with men who want him dead. But I am also experienced. He knows what he is doing. That's not as comforting as you think it is. It is the truth. Sometimes that is the best comfort available. Marco left her alone again. Lena tried to sleep, gave up, and ended up in Victor's study. She'd never spent much time here. It was his space, full of his things, and she'd respected that boundary. Tonight she needed to feel close to him somehow. The room smelled like him. Expensive cologne and the leather of the chair he sat in for hours. She ran her fingers along his desk, looked at the framed photograph she'd never noticed before. A woman with kind eyes and Victor's nose. His mother, probably. She sat in his chair and let herself imagine the worst. Victor not coming home. Carlo winning. Her life exploding again just when she'd convinced herself it was solid. The fear was sharp and real. She'd chosen this. Chosen him. If he died tonight, she'd have to live with knowing she'd loved someone whose world had always been destined to destroy him. Because she did love him. The realization settled over her like falling snow. She loved this complicated, dangerous, surprisingly gentle man who'd given her choices and partnership and a life that mattered. She loved him, and he might die tonight. Lena was still sitting in Victor's chair when her phone rang at 11:30. Unknown number. Her hands shook as she answered. Hello? Mrs. Romano. Not Victor, a voice she didn't recognize. There has been an incident. Your husband asked me to call. Her heart stopped. Is he alive? Yes. Injured, but alive. He is being transported to a private medical facility. I will send the address. Come immediately. Tell no one where you are going. The call ended. Lena stared at her phone, her mind racing. This could be a trap. Could be Carlo's people luring her out to use her against Victor. But if Victor was actually hurt and she didn't go, the address came through. A location in Florence she didn't recognize. She found Marco in the security room, monitoring cameras. I need you to drive me somewhere. Now. Mr. Romano said you stay here. Victor's hurt. Someone just called. He's at a medical facility in Florence and he asked for me. She showed him the address. We go now, or I take a car and go myself. Marco studied her face, then the address. This could be a trap. I know, come with me, bring backup, but I'm going. He made a decision. 5 minutes, full security detail. You do exactly what I say. Deal. They took 2 cars. Marco drove the first with Lena and 2 guards. 3 more guards followed in the second vehicle. Everyone was armed. Everyone looked like they expected trouble. The facility was in an industrial area, unmarked building, lights on and only a few windows. Marco made them circle the block twice, checking for ambush points. I do not like this, he said. Neither do I. But if he's in there, I know. Marco parked, spoke into his radio in rapid Italian. The second car positioned itself at the exit. You stay behind me. You do not leave my sight. Understood? Lena nodded. They entered through a side door. The interior was clinical, sterile, definitely a medical setup. A woman in scrubs met them in the hallway. Mrs. Romano? Where is he? This way. He specifically asked for you. The woman led them down a corridor to a private room. Marco checked it first, verified it was clear, then let Lena enter. Victor was on a hospital bed, shirt off, bandages around his ribs and left shoulder. His face was bruised, one eye swollen, but he was conscious, alert, and alive. You look terrible, Lena said, her voice breaking. You should see the other guy. Victor tried to smile, winced. Actually, you cannot. He is not in viewable condition anymore. She crossed to the bed, careful not to jar him. What happened? Carlo made his move, brought armed men to the summit. Very poor form. There was violence. Victor touched her face with his good hand. I won, but it was close. How bad are you hurt? Cracked ribs, dislocated shoulder that has been relocated, various contusions, nothing that will not heal. He pulled her down for a gentle kiss. I told you I would come back to you. This is not what I pictured when you said that. No, but I'm here. That is what matters. The doctor entered, an older man who looked like he'd seen worse. Mrs. Romano, your husband needs rest. He can go home tomorrow if there are no complications. I'm going home tonight, Victor said. Absolutely not. You have tonight. My home is secure. Your facility, while excellent, is not. Victor's tone left no room for argument. Prepare discharge papers. We leave in 1 hour. The doctor sighed, but didn't fight it. Probably used to Victor's stubbornness. Marco helped Victor dress. It took longer than it should have, every movement clearly painful. But Victor refused a wheelchair, refused help beyond what was absolutely necessary. Pride will kill you, Lena said. Perhaps, but I will die on my feet, not in a wheelchair. They made it to this car. The drive back was tense, everyone watching for tails, but they reached the villa without incident. Signora Rossi met them at the door, relief obvious on her face. Thank the saints, I will prepare your room. Our room, Victor corrected, looking at Lena. If that is acceptable to you. Yeah, that's acceptable. They got him upstairs, into bed. The doctor had provided pain medication. Victor took it grudgingly. I hate feeling foggy, he muttered. Too bad. You need to heal. Lena sat on the edge of the bed. What happened with Carlo? He's dead. So are most of his inner circle. The ones who survived have pledged loyalty to me. His territory is now mine. Victor closed his eyes. It is finished. The threat is eliminated. At what cost? 3 of my men died, 5 others injured. Matteo brokered peace among the remaining factions. My position is stronger than it has ever been. He opened his eyes, looked at her. But I'm tired, Lena. Tired of the violence. Tired of the constant threat. I think perhaps it is time to change course. Change how? Step back from the criminal operations. Focus on legitimate business. I have enough wealth to last several lifetimes. Enough power that people will not challenge me even if I withdraw. He took her hand. I want a different life. One where you are not afraid every time I leave the house. One where we can build something beyond survival. Lena felt tears prick her eyes. You mean that? I do. It will take time. These transitions do not happen overnight. But yes, I am done with this world. He pulled her down beside him. I want the life you chose when you decided to stay. I want to deserve that choice. She kissed him carefully, mindful of his injuries. You already do. No, but I will. This I promise you. They fell asleep tangled together, Victor's breathing steady despite the pain medication, Lena's hand over his heart feeling it beat. The next weeks were a blur of recovery and reorganization. Victor worked from bed, from the terrace, from his study when he could manage the stairs. He was systematically dismantling his criminal empire, selling off operations, severing ties with dangerous associates, and redirecting everything toward legal enterprises. It wasn't clean. Some people didn't want to let him go. There were threats, tense negotiations, a few incidents that required Marco's intervention. But slowly, methodically, Victor extracted himself from the world that had defined him for decades. Lena watched him rebuild himself into something else, someone who still had power but wielded it differently, who could be ruthless when necessary but chose other options first, who was learning to be a husband instead of just a crime lord with a wife. They had their first real fight 6 weeks after the summit. Something stupid about Lena wanting to visit the charity on a day when security was still elevated. Victor said no. Lena went anyway. When she came home, he was furious. I told you it was not safe. And I told you I'm not going to stop living my life because you're paranoid. It is not paranoia when people have actually tried to kill you. No one tried to kill me. They tried to kill you. They yelled at each other for 20 minutes. Then Victor stormed out. Lena threw a book at the door after he left. Signora Rossi found her an hour later, still fuming. Your first real fight, the older woman observed. This is good. How is this good? Because it means you are equals now. You do not fear his anger. He does not expect your submission. You are partners having a disagreement. This is what healthy marriages look like. Victor came back that evening with flowers and an apology. You were right. I cannot keep you in a cage, even a golden one. I will work on trusting that you can take care of yourself. And I'll work on understanding when your paranoia is justified instead of just annoying. Lena accepted the flowers. We're kind of a mess, aren't we? Yes, but we are our mess. That makes it tolerable. They learned to fight fair, to compromise, to recognize when they were being stubborn versus when the issue actually mattered. It wasn't perfect. Some days were harder than others, but they were building something real. 3 months after the summit, Lena realized her period was late. She stared at the calendar, counted days twice, then bought a pregnancy test on the way home from the charity. Took it in the bathroom of a coffee shop because she couldn't wait until she got back to the villa. 2 lines. Unmistakable. Pregnant. Lena sat on the toilet lid, staring at the test, her mind spinning. They'd been careful most of the time. Not all the time, but most. Apparently most wasn't enough. A baby. Victor's baby. She tried to picture him as a father and couldn't quite manage it. Tried to picture herself as a mother, and that was even harder. But underneath the panic was something else. Something that felt almost like joy. She told him that night over dinner, just blurted it out between the pasta and the salad. I'm pregnant. Victor set down his fork very carefully. You're certain? Took a test this afternoon. Pretty certain. He stood, walked around the table, and pulled her into his arms. When he pulled back, his eyes were wet. This is good? He asked, like he wasn't sure. I think so. Is it good for you? Yes. Unexpected, but yes, very yes. He kissed her, then her stomach. A child. Our child. You're not freaked out? I am terrified. I know nothing about being a father. My own father was absent. I have no model for this. Victor pulled her close again. But I want this. Want to try. Want to be better than what I came from. We'll figure it out together, same as everything else. Yes, together. The pregnancy changed things again. Victor became even more protective, which Lena had thought impossible. He hired an obstetrician who made house calls, baby-proofed the villa before she was even showing, started reading parenting books with the same intensity he'd once applied to criminal strategy. Lena worked through her first trimester, morning sickness and all. The kids at the charity noticed when she started showing. "You're having a baby," Sophia announced to the entire class. "This is wonderful. Will you still teach us?" "Of course. Babies don't stop you from doing things. They just make you do them differently." "My mama said babies are hard work, but worth it." "Your mama was smart." Sophia hugged her middle. "I hope your baby is happy, like you are now." 6 months in, Victor announced he was done, completely out of the criminal world. All operations sold or shut down. All ties severed. He was officially just a wealthy businessman with diverse, legitimate holdings. "How does it feel?" Lena asked. They were on the terrace, her feet in his lap because they were swollen and he'd insisted on rubbing them. "Strange, like I have been running for decades and suddenly stopped. I do not know what to do with the stillness." "You'll figure it out. Maybe start with being present, being here. With me. With this." She touched her stomach. "I am here. I will be here. This I promise." He kissed her ankle. "I want to be a good father, Lena. Better than mine was. Better than your father was. I want our child to know stability, safety, love. Things we did not have. We'll give them that. Both of us." The baby came in early spring, 3 weeks before the due date. Labor was long and painful, and Lena cursed Victor's entire lineage at one point. He took it without complaint, held her hand, let her squeeze until his fingers went numb. When the doctor finally placed their daughter in Lena's arms, everything else fell away. She was perfect, tiny and red and screaming her lungs out, but perfect. "We have a daughter," Victor said, his voice thick with emotion. "Lena, we have a daughter. What should we name her?" They discussed names but never decided. Victor looked at the baby, then at Lena. "Elena, after you, but her own person. Elena Rose. Elena Rose Romano." Lena tested the name. "Yeah, that works." Victor held his daughter for the first time with the kind of careful reverence usually reserved for holy relics. Elena stopped crying immediately, stared up at him with unfocused newborn eyes. "Hello, little one," he said softly. "I am your father. I am not very good at this yet, but I will learn. I will protect you. I will love you. I will be better for you than I have been for anyone else." Watching him with their daughter, Lena felt something settle in her chest. This man who'd bought her, who'd given her choices, who'd loved her clumsily but completely, who was now holding their child like she was made of glass and promises. They'd come so far from that first day in the villa, from fear and coercion to this, a family built on choice and second chances and love that hadn't been part of the plan. It wasn't perfect. Nothing ever was. But it was theirs. A year later, Lena stood in the garden watching Victor play with Elena. She was walking now, toddling around on unsteady legs while he hovered nearby, ready to catch her when she fell. "Again," Elena demanded in her limited vocabulary. "Again, Papa." Victor picked her up, tossed her gently in the air, caught her as she shrieked with laughter. Did it 3 more times before Lena called a halt. "She just ate. You want her to throw up on you?" "Worth the risk." But he settled Elena on his hip instead. "She likes the flying. She likes anything that involves you giving her complete attention. As she should. I am extremely attentive." Lena laughed. "You're a pushover. She's going to have you wrapped around her finger by age 3. She already does. I have accepted this." They walked through the garden together, Elena pointing at flowers and birds and demanding to know what everything was. Victor answered with patience that would have shocked the man he'd been 2 years ago. That evening, after Elena was asleep, they had dinner on the terrace. Just the two of them, wine and food and the Tuscan sunset painting everything gold. I spoke to my father last week, Lena said. Victor looked up. How is he? Sober? 3 months now. He started therapy working at a hardware store. Says he wants to meet Elena, eventually, when I'm ready. Are you ready? Not yet. Maybe never. But maybe someday. She took a sip of wine. He asked if I was happy. I told him yes. And you were telling the truth? Lena looked at him across the table. This man who'd changed her life in ways both terrible and beautiful, who'd given her pain and purpose, who'd become her partner in building something good from the worst possible beginning. Yeah, I was telling the truth. Even knowing how we started, the coercion, the lack of choice, all of it. The beginning was awful. I won't pretend it wasn't. But the middle and the end? Those are ours. We chose those. She reached across the table, took his hand. I chose you, Victor. Eventually. When it counted. And you chose me. That's what matters. I did not deserve that choice. Probably not. But you earned it anyway. By changing. By trying. By becoming someone worth choosing. Victor lifted her hand, kissed her knuckles. I love you, Lena. I do not say it enough, but I love you more than I thought myself capable of loving anyone. I love you too, even though you drive me crazy sometimes. The feeling is mutual. They finished dinner watching the sun set. Elena started crying from the nursery. They went together to get her, settled her back to sleep with practiced teamwork. Later, in their bed, Victor pulled Lena close. If you could go back, he said quietly, knowing everything that would happen, would you still get on that plane? Lena thought about it. Really thought about it. The fear and anger and pain of those first weeks. The slow burn of adapting. The moment she'd realized she was choosing to stay. The love that had grown from the least likely soil. I don't know, she said honestly. The beginning was terrible. You were terrible. What you did was wrong, and I'll never say otherwise. But I wouldn't trade where we ended up, this life, this family, this version of us. So maybe the answer is no, I wouldn't choose to get on that plane. But I'm glad I did anyway. Does that make sense? Perfect sense. It is the same answer I would give. He kissed her temple. We are a contradiction, you and I, built on wrong things that became right things. I'm at peace with that now. Me too. They fell asleep tangled together the way they did most nights now. In the morning, Elena would wake them too early. They'd stumble through breakfast and argue about whether she was ready for swimming lessons and laugh at her attempts to feed herself yogurt. It would be chaotic and imperfect and sometimes frustrating, just like their relationship, just like their beginning. But it would be theirs, built on choices made freely. Love earned slowly. Trust constructed piece by painful piece from the wreckage of how they'd started. 5 years after that first day in the villa, Lena stood in the same entrance hall, this time by choice, this time coming home after a committee meeting, her coat soaked from unexpected rain. Signora Rossi took the coat, tisking about the weather. Mr. Romano is in the playroom with Elena and young Marco. Marco, their son, born 2 years after Elena, named after the guard who taught Lena to fight and had become something like family. Lena found them building a fort out of couch cushions. Elena was directing operations with the authority of a general. Little Marco was trying to eat one of the cushions. Victor was attempting to create structural integrity while preventing his son from choking. Mama! Elena launched herself at Lena. We are building a castle. I can see that. Very impressive. Victor looked up, smiling. How was the meeting? Productive. We secured funding for 6 new schools. Sister Teresa sends her love. Excellent. Come, help me with this before your son destroys my architectural vision. Lena joined them on the floor. They built the fort together, the 4 of them, laughing when it collapsed and rebuilding it stronger. When the kids finally wore themselves out, Victor carried Marco to bed while Lena tucked in Elena. Mama? Elena asked sleepily. Papa says you came from far away. From America. That's right. Why did you come here? How to answer that? Lena smoothed Elena's hair back from her forehead. I came here because your papa needed me. And I needed him, even though I didn't know it yet. And together we made this. Our family. I'm glad you came. Me too, baby. Me too. She kissed Elena's forehead, turned out the light, and found Victor waiting in the hallway. She asked about how we met, Lena said. What did you tell her? That we needed each other, that we made something good together, the simplified version. Someday we will tell her the complicated version. Someday. When she's old enough to understand that people can start in terrible places and end up somewhere beautiful anyway. Victor pulled her close. We did end up somewhere beautiful, did we not? Lena looked around the villa that had once been a prison and was now a home. Thought about the life they'd built from the worst possible foundation, the family they'd created, the love that had grown despite everything arguing against it. Yeah, she said, we really did. They walked to their room hand in hand. Outside, the Tuscan night was clear and full of stars. Inside, their children slept safe and loved. And between them was the kind of partnership that couldn't be bought or coerced or forced, only chosen, again and again. Every day. The beginning had been wrong in every way that mattered, but the ending, the life they'd made, the people they'd become, the love that had somehow bloomed in captivity and flourished in freedom,